You know, a lot of his, 98% of his friends are all from Delaware, so the parents didn't come for Parents Weekend, so we ended up, as many as we could fit in the pilot, we took them to dinner, Friday and Saturday night, so they had a good the kids had a good time. They're nice, they seem like a nice group of kids.
We're on.
Means they owe you for Thanksgiving.
Exactly. He's coming home, I already booked his train.
Good evening and welcome to the Norfolk Board of Selectmen's meeting of Tuesday, October 9th. My name is Jim Lehan. To my right is Mr. Rob Garrity. To my left, Mr. Scott Bugby. Walking in front of the camera is Mr. Jack Hathaway, and to his soon-to-be-left Marion Harrington, Executive Assistant. I need to advise everyone that this meeting is being video and audio taped. Mr. Hathaway, would you read the agenda, please?
Be happy to. Meeting of October 9th, Norfolk Board of Selectmen. First order of business, we have the KP School Committee, represented by Pat Francomano. At 7:10, we have the Capital Outlay Committee organizational meeting with them. At 7:30, we have Fire Chief Cole Bushnell to talk about staffing and fees. Also give an update on his radio system. Town Administrator Report. Review of the town meeting warrant, including review of fall town meeting articles, review of capital requests, discussion items, approval of the budget for 82 Main Street, update on the Road Safety Committee, Old Town Hall, KP School Committee. I think Mr. Bugby attended their meeting last week. Update on the town administrator's review, acceptance of minutes, and executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation.
Thanks, Jack. Pat, come on up. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
So I got a couple wires
Yes.
over there, so just be careful.
Thank you for making the time.
Pat, you're still chair, aren't you?
Yes, yes.
I don't think we recognize you in that capacity. But,
That's
Pat,
okay.
Pat is chairman of the King Philip School Committee.
Thank you. The school committee is making an effort to try to reach out to the three towns and in an effort to get more folks involved from the community other than those who you would normally see involved, like your parents and grandparents and whatnot. So to that end, we will be sending each town's Board of Selectmen, each town's Council on Aging, as well as each of the town's elementary school committees, a packet of tickets along with a calendar of events. And those tickets are good for one adult or child admission into either a music event or a MIAA event where there's a charge, or a one of our theater events. So besides this fanfare that you don't have to worry about your agenda anymore, just wanted a chance to just say hello and thank you for your support, and to let you know that these are coming. We have tickets here for October and November, and to use them at your discretion.
Great. That's very nice, Pat. Thanks.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, anything?
No, Chris, thank you.
Pat went to the open house earlier this month.
Yes.
Down there, and just was very impressed by all the excitement. The staff was very excited about the coming school year, and I think a lot of the kids that were there that were helping out, it was a good group. So it's a little scary that a lot of many of the teachers I had are still there.
They think the same thing.
I'll say it's my relative.
Not as scary as when he was there.
That's right.
It's my relative view. Actually, one of the teachers who was there has a married name now. She was
Yeah.
not married when I had her. And about midway through the 5-minute parents' night presentation, I started going, "Oh my God, this is Miss Petrucci," because she was doing the same sort of things she did 25 years ago. And my son has her now.
Wow.
But no, it's a great school.
A tremendous amount of energy in both buildings. The admin team, I think, is off to a great start, and things are going in a great direction. In the interim, anybody has any questions, please feel free to give me a jingle, drop me a line.
Pat, before you go, I just wanted to, Scott is going to give us an update because he attended your meeting on our behalf, but I wanted to thank you publicly for involving us early in the process, and we look forward to more meetings like that and anything we can do to help you put the budget together in a way that is, how should I say, more collaborative with the board at the early stages.
Certainly.
Is much appreciated.
Thank you for that.
Thank
We
you.
are, we are trying.
You are.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
We're a couple of minutes early, and I know there are a few more folks coming for capital outlay, so Dave, if you don't mind indulging us, and Susan, just for a few minutes, and I know there are at least two more members that are going to be joining us tonight. Paul's going to join us, and Marianne Smith will be joining us, so if we can just do a couple of minutes. Okay, great. Jack, you want to touch on a couple of administrative reports?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I could, one of the things that I just handed out was some proposed revisions to the hunting bylaw. The bylaw committee, according to our bylaws, the bylaw committee kind of reviews all of the general bylaw articles for us, and this is their proposal. If I can I'll just go through the lines in red, and if you have any other questions, feel free to interrupt. That first line there, no hunting shall be conducted on private property of less than 5 acres. That was something kind of came about as of discussions from last time. There was a lot of discussion about whether or not what was safe. Obviously, there's regulations. You can't shoot within a certain distance of a house or a building. This was something the committee thought it was a reasonably sized piece of property that would kind of keep control of where people were hunting. The second section there where it says "or notice," that is the intent of kind of capturing the property owner. So the property owner would be required to just give notice to the police that they're hunting on their property. Again, this goes back to Chief Stone's kind of analogy of putting this in the same terms of the fire permit. Makes it a lot easier for the fire department to handle any issues when they know where the legal fires are going on. If they start getting questions from people, they can say, well, yeah, there's a burning permit, 2 doors down. We'll check it out, but that should be the problem. This is the same thing with the hunting. If they know, even if it's a property owner, they want to know where the hunting is going on, just to try and answer questions when people call and say there's hunting going on.
That or notice, though, that to me means that you don't have to give written permission. You can call in or you can do something other. And the third thing, the or engage in, that catches the property owner. Is there idea that you don't have to give the written permission? Maybe they'll have like a online form or they'll have a call in. Like on the fire, you do one-time registration and then you just call in. Is that the same idea, you think?
That could be the same. I'll double check on that. That could be. I thought I was when we had the discussion, I was under the understanding that that notice was, the property owner giving notice of his or her intent
To the police.
To the police.
Because it's contradictory. Well, you can't just give notice, because below that you say the property owner still has to go to the police station and file written permission, right? So you can't do or notice or maybe that's each time they come out, say I'm a little confused, right? Because don't you say each property owner wishes, whether they allow or engage, must file written?
Well, again, my understanding is you can't give written permission to yourself to hunt on your property, so that's why they put in that you would give notice to the police department that you were going to hunt on your property. That's the intent of the notice.
But permission or notice of the property owner.
Right. So
The private person hunting on their own lands, asking permission, more or less, is in the third change. That second change doesn't have to do with that.
I'll have to bring my
that dumbs down the written permission requirement to be a notice requirement.
Again, not my understanding. I can check with my lawyer, my attorney, Mr. Tallerman, and my recollection was that notice was intended to. When I asked the question about, does this capture property owners?
It does in the third line. The property owner who wishes to allow or engage in hunting on the property.
But it still means the property owner has to give written notice.
Right.
So there's no way you can't do a verbal or notice. The way it's written here, it's very strange, right?
Except you could give written notice one time.
For someone to hunt, like
if they're following the same idea it is for the burning permit, you get a written notice one time and then you call in each time you're doing it. Isn't it?
Where
He's looking at
where did these changes come from?
the bylaw committee.
Did they get feedback from people, or is this just sort of creative writing here?
Somewhat creative.
Because they already gave it to us once, right? So it's coming back again? I guess-
No, the original came from discussion between Mr. Weddleton, Mr. Stone,
Oh,
Chief Stone and myself,
Oh, okay.
along with feedback from last year. And Rob participated in conversations as well.
Well, it'll be, so this is the final article?
No, this is, I told them that they, I didn't want to go through the same process I went through last year where I just adopted the bylaw committee's changes without having kind of go through a process here. So this is their recommended changes. Doesn't mean you have to accept them. So the article that's in the warrant is still the original article.
But crossed out, if we
I-
go back with that, cross out the calendar year, right?
I'm not an avid hunter, but I have hunted. I've never seen an article that required, and correct me if someone has, but I've never seen one that required you to notify the police when you're hunting on your own property. Has someone seen one that says that?
No.
I've never seen that.
I mean, it still helps the police, though, so the neighbors get nervous. You know, I'm out in the backyard hunting. It would be a help to the police if they get a call and say, I hear gunshots.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Bugby. He already let us know that he's turkey hunting today.
That's what she's
But,
telling me.
but this is requiring you to go down to the police station.
Yeah, I don't like that part.
and,
about gun-
and notify you every time you want to hunt on your own property. And I've never seen that before. And you know, I fully support the onus of getting permission to be on the hunter. But I don't see the wisdom of
Well,
a property owner having to go down to the police station and make that notification to hunt on his own property. I understand the logic of it, but I just personally don't agree with that.
We can strike the.
Well, I mean,
in that
I disagree with it doesn't mean we strike it, but I mean,
the sentence, where are you picking that up?
thank
though?
you.
Or engage, right? So that's you, Jack. So
Yep.
the property owner engaged in hunting on the property must file written notification, the person.
I think
That
that's
each
very
time,
cumbersome.
too? Like,
No, I don't think that was each
Property
time.
But it doesn't say whether it is or isn't, so it's open for interpretation, too. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't want to make this overly cumbersome, but to me, it does seem like you might have to do it every time. It doesn't say you don't, it doesn't say you do either.
And we talked about how much of the detail we put into the bylaw
Right.
versus, you know, like the fire permits, it's not in the bylaw, it's just, if the fire chief wants to change the process, he can change the process without having to amend the bylaw. And I think that was kind of the intent here. We didn't want to
Right.
Well, you know, we have a tendency to write bylaws that are subject to, and sometimes it's a good thing, to have some latitude for people to interpret it. But I think Scott's point is a good one. Is the intent of this that you do it once, or is the intent of this that you do it every day you hunt?
Well, I think that for it to be useful to the police department, it's helpful to them to somehow know every day. It doesn't have to be in person, but
But it doesn't say that. It says each property owner who wishes to allow or engage in hunting on their property must file written notification in person with the Norfolk Police Department. Period.
No, that says. But
Prior
no,
to any hunting on
prior,
said
so
property.
That doesn't
But
imply.
but it could be 3 months before. It doesn't say it's,
Well,
Then-
that's my point. So does a person come down 3 months before and say, I'm going to be hunting on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday?
Or just says I'm going to be hunting in the future. So I'd be lazy. I just ain't going to hunt. I don't know when.
Very
because-
ambiguous to me.
well,
Sorry, Jack's getting hammered here, but you know, it's not your right.
again, do you want to put all the details in the bylaw? I thought we were trying to get away from that.
Okay.
So that's why we left it ambiguous.
Well, then what's the standard? I mean, it's okay to be ambiguous if there's a standard in terms of how it's going to be applied.
Well, I thought it would leave it up to the interpretation of the chief, and again, if he goes, he would probably go conservative in the beginning, and then if things are working and he gets some feedback that we should allow some flexibility, we'd allow some flexibility. I'm all for putting more detail in here if you want, but that was,
Where'd that first line come in here?
I just,
Person shall hunt on town lands without town-owned lands. Okay. Oof.
it's crazy, isn't it?
Oof. I missed the whole line. I'm sorry. I gotta stop
you missed the
sleeping
own-
in
you missed the
meetings.
own part?
5 acres.
Yeah.
I mean, that,
Can I
know, not
get you another
talking
cup of
to hunters.
I haven't drunk any yet.
It's pretty big.
And you can't hunt on your own property. So if my property's not 5 acres, I can't hunt. on
No,
my
you
own
can't.
property?
Under this, you couldn't.
Yeah, see.
But
I
you
think
probably
I think
can't-
I
You
have-
probably can't,
I have
I don't think-
5.6. You can come up to
hunt. Like, but
Only
I
in
think,
that-
you know,
but can you hunt on your own property now?
No, probably 'cause of the-
because of the
No, I
house.
can't.
Right, so that's
the
what I mean. So that
limitations
already
on
He could
governs
bow
it.
hunt, couldn't he?
But that already governs it, so that seems to be enough. This just seems overly restrictive.
I don't know.
He could. Uh,
Oh, she's not here. This is. I don't wanna
is
get-
there a restriction on bow hunting? No, but is,
It was. Now it's.
Well, let's not get
Yeah.
into let's not get into a public forum on this. Um, it's okay.
well, because in firearms there's the spatial.
Right. No, I know. I get that.
I don't
150
think
so-
there are with bows.
So you're already covered then, Jack. That's what I mean. Like, whether it's 1 acre property, 2 acre property. If someone, you're right. I can't hunt on my own because.
Again, these were suggestions by the
Well, I
bylaw
understand,
committee. If you
but-
don't like them, you don't have to adopt them.
Jack, okay, we don't. I don't like them.
I have a feeling you're getting emotionally tied to this one, Jack.
I'm getting emotional.
No,
There's no emotion in it at all. I just think it's confusing. So. like the
let's
original
go.
bylaw.
Let's just go back to what the intent of what this was all. How did this all start? This started with the desire to put the burden of notification on the hunter, not the property owner. In other words, just posting your property, therefore you cannot hunt. We know that has not worked. Doesn't work anywhere. Signs disappear and people ignore it. So the intent was to put the burden back onto the hunter, saying you must get permission to go onto private property. That was the intent. And now we've taken that further, and we're saying that you can't even hunt on your own property without notifying the police department. And we are making it very much like the fire permit.
Yep.
And I didn't think that was the intent of what this was all about. I like the simplification. You say keep it simple. I like the original version of it.
It's very simple.
I agree. I like what we
And
had.
I
just
think we're
striking January
complicating it. I
1st.
think we're making it very difficult and cumbersome. And you say we want to try it. Why don't we try? I mean, I'm speaking to you, Zoe. It's your article. It's not. Why don't we?
Yeah.
When we try the simpler one,
Well, why? I mean, if we're feeling this out, why wouldn't we air? Right now, we don't have anything for all intents and purposes other than the standard posting bylaw.
Yep.
Why
Statement.
wouldn't we just reverse the logic of that and put the burden on the hunter? Try that, and if we need to tighten it up or create this reporting process, then we do that rather than making it so cumbersome and then having to undo it. I just
As
just
your
think
public
it's
safety-
gone beyond the scope of what we originally
Oh, yeah.
this bylaw was originally intended to do. But if you guys disagree, it's majority rules.
I think we go back to the original we have here, unless the January 1st, since that was too hard. I think it would be debated on town floor anyways, right? There was some both sides. There was some pretty heated,
I mean,
not heated, but
it
good
can be
discussion of
amended
what,
on town
hunters
floor as
versus-
long as it's within the scope of the
hunters
article.
versus homeowners anyway, so let them see what they have to say. I
well,
mean,
this still has the January 1st one, which we take out.
Yeah, I mean, we could take that out.
it's already taken out there.
Well, but it's not in your version that you've got. I mean, we could, if you took that out.
I'll just say, as your public safety liaison, the chief was quite concerned that it's much easier on for his operations if he knows.
You only have the fire. I have the police.
You have the police?
I have the police.
Oh, did we split then? Okay, then you can deal with the chief on this then.
No, you can have it for that.
Oh, no. Hey, all hunting anywhere, man.
But I mean,
Season's
I mean,
open.
It maybe we have to go there. I just, it's, yeah, I don't have a dog in this hunt personally, so I'm just thinking of people that, is that poorly said?
No, that's fine. I just.
But I'm just thinking about how people will react to this, and we do have hunters. Kind of like when we tried to come up with some rules regarding snowmobiles and things like that. I mean, it gets to the point where you're just intruding on people's privileges.
And the enjoyment of their own property.
Yeah.
Let me copy that for Mr. Lehan if he needs it.
Oh, yeah, it's not split.
Is it not me? Oh, it's not?
Not split.
Oh, well, then it's your problem.
You were public safety for the purposes of the police contract.
Ah, okay. No wonder okay.
All right, so why don't we just go back to
You may
the
have that in the future.
7:25.
So go back to the agenda. We can get back to this fun later after.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's,
Oh,
okay.
Okay. I was going to say, just go back to what we had.
Thanks for indulging us. Come on, we have 4 members of the Capital Outlay Committee. Can you all come up and
Grab a
for a
couple
second?
chairs.
And Paul, thanks for joining us. David, Susan, and Mary Ann, great.
Take one, pass those down.
I have one. Is this changed though?
Um,
I'll take one again, but
uh,
my notes on there, Jack. I was supposed to review. It's only 2 pages. How come? Wait. How
It's
did
2 pages. It's
them going.
different font. Actually, had to retype it.
Thanks very much for all coming in. Normally we don't always ask folks to come into the selectmen's meeting, but it's been so long since we've seen a capital outlay committee, we forgot what everybody looked like. So, thank you. The good news is that we really need you this year. Which means that we have some funds that we can expend on capital. So that's the good news. Bad news is we don't know how much yet, but it will be meaningful. It'll be some meaningful money, which is the good news. Bad news is that the requests will probably be 3 times the amount of funds we have. Again, pardon? That's expected. Yeah, I know, Paul. But I thought it would be, we do have room upstairs reserved for you for a brief 10-minute meeting if you folks want to get together. And there are 2 other members that are not here tonight, Art Franzak and Ray Ewer, who couldn't make it tonight, but they are members of the committee as well, and there's still 1 vacancy. So folks at home, we still need 1 person to join this group. Just because some of you have not participated in it before. Dave, you're a veteran, I know. Paul, you were on it before.
I have, but this will be the first meeting.
So you got appointed to the committee that never got to meet. That's the best job in town. I thought it would be helpful just to kind of give you a little bit of background on it. The Capital Outlay Committee is responsible for bringing forward to town meeting their view of what recommendations should be funded. The different departments, police, fire, schools, they will all come before you. They will all present you with this list of needs that are all very real and very legitimate. And then your role is to play Solomon and figure out which ones that you would prioritize and fund, because you won't have enough money to fund them all. I mean, that's kind of the simple version. We'll share with you from our side of the house our view of it in terms of where we think the priorities are, but that's just our input. You folks make the decision. It's your call. You make the decision, you make the recommendations, and you bring it forward to town meeting. And, whether we agree or disagree, we're no different than anybody else that comes to town meeting. We can debate it on town floor and see where it goes. But that's really your role. Rob, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's the length and breadth of it.
We think, we tried to find out today, but we were not able to get the magic word from Representative Winslow. But we could have anywhere from, we got $86,000 of prison mitigation money last year. In some years, we've had as much as $390,000. We think that the number will be above 200 this year. We also have $1.1 million of free cash certified. And while we have not made any decision, we are going to recommend that a good portion of that be put into our stabilization fund, our reserves. But there could be some funds that we could loosen up to add to the capital fund to help fund some of the projects you have. But you should have a pretty good chunk of money. But we'll get that to you as soon as we know. Certainly you'll have all of the prison mitigation money.
But it's going to be a lot less than this is. We back of the enveloped this, which doesn't even have numbers for everything, and it's in excess of $890,000. And there are some things that aren't on this list that are in play as well. There's a lighting upgrade for Town Hall that was talked about. That's about $14,000. And when you do this, I would just think also about year 2 and 3. You know, there's things that got to be done, and do we got to do them this year? Can we do them next year? Can we do them the year after?
A good example of that is the library. This committee funded the library sorter. And Dave, I think you were on it then, but I believe you funded that over 3 years. You made a commitment that you would set aside, because you didn't have sufficient funds to pay for it up front, if you will, because there just weren't enough there, but you committed to making installment payments, so to speak, over a 3-year period. That's certainly within your privilege to do that. It's just that much less you have in the bucket the following year.
If there's a bucket.
Pardon?
If there's a bucket.
Yeah,
Bidding for not necessarily funding.
Right.
We've always had a bucket up until we hit this financial crisis of the last 4 or 5 years, and we think that the worst is over. We hope the worst is over. Who knows? But something happens in the international market, we could be back there again, I guess. But you're right. If there's a bucket, you're right. Yeah. But I think if, I'm only speaking for me, I'm not speaking for the board, but if you made a commitment, I think the library was like $15,000 or $20,000 a year.
That was 10 for 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, any commitment you make, I would hope would be in that type of range, that we could commit, we could fulfill the commitment that you made, even if we didn't get prison mitigation funds. We could find 10 or 20, we can't find 50 or 60, but we could find 10 or 20, if that type of commitment were made. Because once they buy it, and they're into a lease agreement where they have to pay for 3 years, they're on the hook too, so. And that's the only instance I can think of where there was a commitment made outside of, at least that I can remember, under the 1 year. It's rare. But I don't know what the requests are that you'll get. I know that the chief is going to, you'll see a long list of, on the fire side, you'll see multiple, 3 chainsaws, things of that nature. And I don't know, have we gotten the schools
Does-
input?
Just, no, not,
Just-
other than they are going to have a paving and playground at the HL Day School that they're going to bring forward.
I'm not saying this to,
Jim,
sorry,
sorry to
sure,
interrupt
go
you.
ahead.
Does this list represent like up to a certain amount, or this is the whole kit and caboodle? Only reason I ask is there was some very expensive highway department
vehicles?
vehicles, et cetera. Now maybe we've decided at the moment that's not in the short-term horizon, but
Oh, the paver he was looking at?
oh no, this was like, remember
No, like
when we
the
had the 10-year
thousands.
schedule?
The
Yeah.
11-year capital
Yes,
schedule that we put
yes.
together? Yeah, some of
The idea, this is more immediate, this is in the next year, people are looking for these.
I think when we talk about vehicles, I'll bring, what I would like to do is bring the DPW, fire, and police all together and talk about that, and we'll present to you the longer schedule as well as this, because you're right, it's not something, I mean, I could pollute this with a whole bunch of information as well, but it would be,
These are more short-term
These would
needs.
be more near-term.
these are the
Correct.
priority 1 and
Okay.
priority 2 type stuff, not,
Right. And DPW has a real need, I will tell you. That would be, I think, we would agree that that's, we laugh, I've said it before, we have a truck that's got over almost 400,000 miles, never left Norfolk, but their equipment is pretty well worn out.
In the case where it's a replacement, how's salvage value taken into account? Where do those funds come back into the system?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Where does salvage value of replaced equipment come back into the system?
we generally, the selectmen will surplus, they'll take a vote to surplus the equipment, and then we'll go through the public procurement, it's a reverse procurement process, and auction it off, or,
But technically, it's next year's free cash. You can't capture
Yeah.
any of that for
Yeah.
this.
We just had our free cash certified, and we had a good year for that, for a whole bunch of reasons. So we do think we can free some money up in addition to what you'll get from prison. Dan made the quote, I think Dan said that he thought we'd get around $286,000. Jack heard a rumor today that Walpole had their allocation.
$750.
If that's true, we certainly ought to be in the 280 range. We seem to get the short end of the stick with Walpole anyway, but
One prison?
we're hopeful that
You
you'll.
heard that? Have you heard anything about Walpole's number?
It's always astronomical.
Also, when it comes to, say, vehicles or larger pieces of equipment, how is it determined if we're going to finance it or lease it, or is this, the number here, is that just a cash price?
That's the cash price.
It's the
So-
cash price,
So,
right.
But we're actually going to incur 1/5 or 1/10 or 1/7 of that, is that?
We buy them outright.
No, we buy them outright. Your role in your committee is you should look at it as buying the equipment outright. Yeah. If when we buy equipment that we're going to lease, which we have done, like the ambulance, we try to work that into the operating budget.
Because we can't make a multi-year capital commitment. While you should be planning multiple year, we can't say, okay, next year's capital is going to start at 23.5 because of the car leases we got. That you can do in the operating budget. We should have capital in the operating budget, but that's a conversation for another day.
It's to your point, Paul. We can't run the risk of having meaningful encumbrances that would fall back to the operating budget if we didn't anticipate it or plan it.
I mean, I guess, my answer, not to disagree, but would have been I would have tweaked that a little bit and just said, I'd look at the priorities and start adding up how much once we find out how much money we have available, obviously, and then start looking at what the priorities are. I mean, we have financed through a debt borrowing vehicles before. Whether or not we want to do that or not, I'm not, I don't even know yet, because it depends on how much prison mitigation we have and how much money we want to free up out of the free cash, but,
Since the interest rates are so low, any way to say if 1/5 of this, whatever gets approved is going to be for, large scale capital items that we can appreciate over a number of years, can you take 4/5 of that money and set it aside for next year?
Make sure you use
another 1/5 and then continue to do that.
You need to use the microphone, sorry. It's for the folks at home. You could. The only concern I have with that, Paul, is that, again, back to your statement, that prison mitigation money has been erratic at best. And while we are cautiously optimistic that it will continue, we have no guarantee of that. I mean, we went to within 2 weeks of when the check was deposited to find out they had removed it at the last minute out of the budget, because it's a budgeted item within the Department of Corrections. So they have the freedom of removing it at a whim, which is what they did about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I've forgotten which. But anyway, so anything that we extend payments on, we have to have the ability to sort of merge that into our operational budget the following year. Even if we borrow money to pay for it, we have to pay that back, and that becomes an operational expense within the budget. That debt is within the budget, not outside of the budget, unless we go for an override, and we're not asking anyone to do that. So, I mean, we could consider it, but, until things stabilize and we have some confidence that I mean, I'm the eternal optimist, so I think things have gotten better, and, the housing market's picking up, and we've got some developments going on in town. So there are a lot of good signs, but it's a fragile world. And if some of the things happen, that's going on with the euro and some other areas internationally, that will impact us, and we could slip back. And we don't want to encumber ourselves to the point that we put any of our departments at risk. That's just, I'm speaking only for me. You guys jump in if you view it differently. Oh, okay. Any questions? Anything we can do? Feel free to call any of us if there's anything we can do to help you.
I have two other questions.
Sure.
One, is when did the doors close on submitting requests?
Where did Jack go?
Went out to the fire.
He went out to get more requests, I think. With the exception of the schools, I don't think we have clarity on the schools. And don't take this the wrong way, but the schools, they'll have some requests, but keep in mind in terms of the new school, they had a very large capital budget as part of the new school project. Very large. So, which is a good thing. They still have needs, but they did have a large capital budget in that project. Jack, are all the requests in, or are there more coming, other than schools?
Just schools, and there may be, I have the library facility cost, there may be, I don't know if there's gonna be a couple library stacks, or, there may be a couple of operational additions.
Paul was asking, what's the deadline? Is there any hard deadline, soft deadline?
No, I mean.
Before town meeting.
So they can, so they have an idea of, they're considered, then something else comes in.
I can get that just from the library tomorrow. That's.
Okay.
I think I think the school would just like to come in and present. She and I have literally been trading voicemails for a week now, but they, I told her I would make sure that she gets scheduled on the Capitals on their agenda. But she told me that they have a playground and some paving to do. I thought she said in the neighborhood of $40,000. I'm not sure if I heard that correctly, but I thought that's what she said. And then the library, Robin had left me a message, and it was just, I'm confused if there was more than this, so.
Who's the liaison to capital outlay? Is it me?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
We always have the chairman. Yes.
Okay. So I guess I'm your liaison, so feel free to call. We divide and conquer. We're all liaisons to different committees and boards, so feel free to give me a call. The only night I ask you, if you're scheduled, if it's at all possible not to do it on Tuesday nights, that would be great, because we're always in meetings on Tuesday nights. But I will come to your meetings, or I don't get a vote. It's entirely up to you folks. Is everybody sworn in?
Yeah.
One last quick question.
Sure.
Separate from the advisory board?
You have to get sworn in,
Okay.
separate committee.
I'll
Yeah.
stop by and see him.
Yes, Paul?
Is there a process in place, or an old process that's documented, that has been used in the past to help prioritize these types of things.
I've never been on the Capital Outlay Committee as a formal debating member. Dave, have you?
No.
And Art hasn't either, has he?
No. I'll ask Arlie.
Arlie's been on
I'll
it.
ask Arlie next week.
Yeah, Arlie Sterling
Did
on
it for
the
a
Finance
number of
Committee's been
years.
on it,
Okay.
and the Advisory Board. We'll find out for you.
Guttas and Juanas. And then if it's something that saves money, it goes at top of the line.
Exactly.
DPW had a great thing last year where they got a compactor, which will actually save us on transport costs. So to the extent we can do that kind of thing, and looking at this list, I don't think there's a lot of possibility. Although there is a lighting plan which saves us $3,500 a year in electricity, but just
That is a paid political announcement.
from the Energy Committee.
Okay.
214 is right upstairs, right over us. Just if you want to organize yourselves and
Okay.
let us know who chair is and secretary, or if you want to defer that to the other two members, entirely up to you.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you very, very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Thanks for volunteering.
Thank-
It's not easy to play Solomon in these situations. I think it's going to be a great committee. Not to suggest that the other one wasn't, but I think it's a great group. It's nice to have some fresh eyes on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Is this the first time we've used this?
In this manner, yes.
The way you're playing with it, I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, well, we're still perfecting it. You guys scare,
We always do. 2-3.
Well, that was a quick presentation. All right, what's next?
Whatever he wants, right?
Whatever he wants, right? No. Doesn't work that way.
There we go, that's better.
Do you, am I making more out of this?
No.
thing?
No, but I'm betwixt a rock and a hard place, given my penchant for letting the committees do their work.
Oh, but this is our bylaw.
Yeah.
I mean, we're bringing this recommendation forward, so it ought to reflect our views.
Yep.
It's their bylaw. It's different.
Right.
And we can amend or debate on town floor. This is ours.
Mm-hmm.
I just think we made a very cumbersome process on what the intent of this was. Where did Cole go? I think like a little
I got this.
downtime for TV, huh?
Sent that already. Goes over
Welcome
next
back, Chief.
Everything copacetic?
Good news is Lieutenant Jones is still.
You chased your audience away, Cole.
I have that ability, yes.
Chief, it's always nice to see you.
Well, the pleasure is certainly all mine to have the opportunity to come down here. I'd like to open by saying I wish I was here in a more jovial manner, but unfortunately I'm not. I've had a chance to
The
talk.
Yankees behind?
No,
1-1.
but
They're not playing tonight, are they?
A-Rod can't hit. That's our problem right now.
He struck out last night. It was great. The bottom of the ninth.
I'm
It was
glad.
great.
I'm glad that you enjoyed it. He's struck out, I believe, 6 times now.
It happened to a nicer team.
Yeah. I was looking for that.
Tell me how you really feel, Mr.
It
Chair.
happened to a nicer team.
And the Jets lost. It was a win-win. It's like a win-win all around.
You used to be a nice guy, too. Last Tuesday night, we had an experienced problem with our radio.
Starting with the radio?
Yeah, I'll start with the radio. We'll get the big thing out of the way first. We lost communications about 11 o'clock at night. It was a medical dispatcher realized that the shift wasn't aware and was able to get them out. We did some quick review of the system. We called Jamie in, and we were able to cold start the system, get it up. We thought we were in good shape. The system stayed together until Thursday afternoon. We had a request for mutual aid to rent them for a structure fire. Dispatcher dispatched it called me on the phone and asked if I was going to go to the fire. So we knew it was out a second time. We had it reviewed. We brought in George B. Voorhees out of Ashland. We've been doing some business with him, buying some equipment. He's done some consulting work for us. He came out to take a look. We also utilized the police department's firm. They have a contract, Comtronics. Basically, we couldn't get any explanation for what was going on, other than the fact that we were having trouble with our repeater. We fast forward ahead to Friday morning, about 2 o'clock, the system went out again, and at that time we realized that we had a very serious problem, that we were continually losing the system. We went to the Norfolk County Regional Dispatch. We assumed a channel. They provided us with a channel to operate on. The problem with going that route is we don't have the ability to page, so we can operate internally and handle all the incidents on scene, but we can't recall the off-duty career and the call staff, so that becomes problematic. We stayed on Norfolk County over the weekend. We brought in a company from Connecticut, Tactical Communications, who handled my communications work. When I was in Connecticut, I consulted with Jack and said that I needed someone that I could trust entirely to take a look at the system. The system was evaluated this morning. Drove the repeater down back to Connecticut to have it evaluated. Unfortunately, the equipment that we have is in such situation that it probably needs to be replaced. Actually, the main repeater was red tagged. It's no longer serviceable. The backup repeater at this point needs to be further evaluated to determine if we need to replace that as well. We can look at a number of different reasons why this happened over the years. Since I've been here for the 8 years, we've had a minimum of 4 people that have worked on these systems. And obviously, the more cooks that you bring to a meal, the worse the meal gets to be prepared. There's a lot of problems that we noted on the system. The system itself works with a console at the dispatch, where the dispatchers will initiate the call. It then goes to what's called a comparator that's in our building. The comparator takes the information, sends its voice to the repeater. We have our main repeater at the Weber tank. Our secondary, our backup, is at Sharon Ave. So what we have is really a complete system breakdown. The report that's initially been filed by Tactical Communications indicates that the system really needs to be reworked. Had a discussion this afternoon with Chief Stone, Lieutenant Carroll. We also brought in a gentleman called, his name is Rick Wright. He is a resident of Norfolk who works for Foxborough, handling their communications. Talked about a number of different ways of handling the situation. One of the recommendations that Jack had made early on last week was that we need one vendor to address this matter for us. I concurred, and after a lengthy discussion with Chief Stone and with Lieutenant Carroll and later with Jack, we determined that we would be best served by having Comtronics contracted to come in and start at the console and move all the way out, that we would provide the specifics of what our problems are that need resolution. However, that becomes an issue because we can't initiate that work until we actually replace the repeaters. I will tell you that we are in clear and present danger as we speak. The radio, which we are working on a singular radio, which is an in-cabinet repeat. In other words, the radio is not connected to anything externally. It's serving, it's a standalone unit at this point. It would be similar to just having a repeater taken and placed into a position. It's connected to the antenna. It will work on a standalone. How long that radio will be viable for is anybody's guess. The radio itself is about 8 years old now. It was one of the initial purchases that I made when I got here to get our secondary site up. That is not an optimal way to run public safety operations. It's quite dangerous. Our fallback or our contingency in the event that radio should fail would be to immediately go back to Norfolk County, use the channel, and we would be left with CTY, the telephone notification system that the town utilizes. Jack did some work for us on Sunday on that. We have one of our staff people that are doing some further work. But that would be our only means, realistically, for recalling, other than having the staff keep the dedicated channel on. Obviously, some of the situations that we run into would use the Norfolk County channel is the urban departments such as Randolph, Stoughton, Milton use this channel a great deal. So we tied it up from Friday until late Sunday when we switched over to the system that we're using now. So the situation is, as it stands, ballpark for buying the 2 repeaters, and we don't have a quote, is in the area of $30,000. That would be 2 repeaters. That doesn't include any of the work that needs to be done. The one caveat that we are going to do, we're planning to do, and we would certainly like the blessing of the board in this process, would be to, when we're done on our system, is to have tactical communication come back out, perform the third-party acceptance test, so that we can validate the system as it is repaired and reinstalled to ensure that we never end up in a situation like this again. One of the things that we are going to do on the system, we put it back together again, is the comparator has the ability with Ethernet cards to transmit any supervisory signals directly to wherever we want that information to go. It can go to the radio vendor, it could go to Jack, it could go to myself, Chief Stone, go to the dispatcher. So it would alarm when as soon as a problem occurs with the system, we'd be aware of it. We can set the parameters for the alerts, and that's quite beneficial. In all 3 instances, the dispatcher was never aware that our system was down until it tried to dispatch. We have a warning capability on the console, which is obviously failed and not working. And the information that we're obtaining through Comtronics, which is under contract for the console and dispatch, is that the manner and that the way that was installed was not proper, and which probably led to the failure of the warning system. I had a chance to speak with Rob at length as our liaison on Friday. I want to thank him very much for taking the time out to listen to our tale of woe. But that's a thumbnail sketch of where we are. As I said, I can't emphasize enough clear and present dangers where we stand. I don't know from a fiscal standpoint of how we would proceed. This is obviously an emergency situation. I'd be glad to answer any and all questions related, and I'm sure that there will be many, if not from the board, perhaps from the community, as to how we ended up in this situation. And I'd be glad to discuss that frankly with anyone who would like to continue that part of the conversation.
Rob, do you want to add anything?
No, I did talk to the chief. This is very problematic, and I hope we can get something solved in the next couple of weeks, really, less than that.
We're going to meet Chief Stone, Lieutenant Carroll, myself, and Jack will be meeting with Comtronics on Friday morning. The tenor of that meeting will be to plan a strategy for how this is handled, to provide a clear-cut depiction of where we stand on this in terms of dollars. Right now, out of pocket, we've spent about $400 with George B. Voorhees. I have a bill coming from Tactical for their services. They were here on Friday. They arrived at 10:30. They left at 7:30. And at that time, we have the radios up in the manner that the radio up in the manner that it's presently being utilized.
Don?
Well, question. So there's no hope, or there's no. We have to get 2 new repeaters no matter what. I mean, is that
I'm holding out some hope that the present backup radio that we're using at Town Hill can be enlisted to give us some breathing room. We would return that to Sharon Ave as a standby. I'm hopeful that after that radio is placed on a bench and some testing is performed, that it would give us some time to do so. Obviously, it wouldn't be the most reliable backup, but it would serve as a backup so that we could come forward with a plan. I mean, the corollary to this, and I told Chief Stone and Lieutenant Carroll I would bring their concerns as well. Their radios are of the same age Their radios are a grade above what the fire department has. The radios that we have are very susceptible to changes in voltage. For instance, when we lose power and the generator comes back on, we do have some UPS issues at both sites that will be addressed as part of this project to get that resolved. But the radios that they have are more forgiving in taking that voltage spike. But the tactical communications who was here with us on Friday, did indicate that the police department should anticipate putting a plan together to look into having those radios removed as well, just simply because of age and because of the overall system. And it would probably be somewhere in the same range as well. Right now, their system's up and operating. They're confident that the vendor they have, Comtronics, that they're in fairly good shape. But I think it'd be prudent, and the conversation with Chief Stone would be prudent to certainly have their system looked at very, very closely to ensure that they don't default to our situation.
Wouldn't that be something you put on the the capital requests? Right, I mean, both you have a bunch of stuff on here. I know some of it has to be fixed immediately.
Right,
like.
right,
We can
and
do it through
that's something that certainly can be discussed as we move forward. As I said, their situation is not as exigent, obviously, as our situation.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't see this as a capital request. I mean, it is in one sense of the word, but not in terms of what.
Well, I think he's talking about the police, the longer term.
The long-term planning. Radios getting old. They need to be replaced, I assume, sooner or later.
Let me just make one quick. First, Chief, thank you. You've kept us well informed through this whole process, so thanks for doing that. You always do a great job at that. Well, Jack, let me just ask you. You've been close to this, so your view.
Well, Cole said we've had a number of conversations, obviously, about this. I think meeting Friday, this coming Friday, with the vendors will after we've had a couple days to digest what they're talking about and having them come up with a plan. I think at that point we'll have a good plan, and then moving forward, we will certainly have the entire communications system under one contract so that if we have an issue, we don't have any question about who we go to, or no finger pointing between the vendors. Not that happened this time, but I've seen it in other
We had that.
circumstances,
That's
whether
happened
it's the
before
accounting
with us.
system or whatever, Comcast and whatever. So I think we've had some good success with Comtronics and go forward with them. And I've also learned through this process, talking to some of the other parties that have been involved in here, that the vendor that Cole brought up from Connecticut has an outstanding reputation. So I think having them come in and just give us a double check at the kind of the end of the day, look over the plan and then look over the final installation would be a good idea, just to make sure that we're not missing something critical and putting all our eggs in one basket with one vendor. So
We've already reached out to Comtronics, and I let them know what my concerns were, and they enthusiastically endorsed having a peer review of their work. They don't have a problem with it, and they would welcome it.
Rob, you had
Well, I'm just going to ask the really dumb question because my extensive public safety background is Adam 12 when I was a kid and Hill Street Blues when I got older. So why don't both police and fire, why isn't it as simple as, well, fire's on channel 4, police on channel 6, same transmitters, why separate systems?
Operating separate systems just because of different disciplines, but if you want to look at the rudimentary difference, it's our system is set up on a dispatch format, so all of the pagers that the firefighters carry operate solely on our specific frequency by the tones that are available. If we were to, say, use one channel for both police fire, and I believe that was done, Steve, you would probably know, at one time, police and fire in Norfolk operated on a single channel? And what happens is the amount of traffic that you have. You could have a fire department, medical, and a police stop,
I
and
think it just means one machine, though, two different frequencies.
Yeah, not the same frequency, but why isn't there just one big
Because-
communications machine?
right, and that's because of the repeater. You need a dedicated repeater for each discipline. We do have that available. We have a backup radio that's utilized in the station for specific failures such as this. and as long as the repeater's up and running, we can go through it. But we do have radios that we utilize for that function, that carry, there's one that carries all the police channels in the area, and there's one that carries strictly all the fire channels in the area. So we have that capability as well. But we need a repeater up and running to make it work. One of the things that we tried, we brought the system up when the repeater is down, is we had a fire alarm come in on Dedham Street that early Friday morning, and the dispatcher just tried dispatching it, and the signal carried as far as Dunkin' Donuts and dropped out. So we don't have very much reach without the repeater system set up. But that's the reason why you can't utilize a radio and then move to a repeater in that manner. The $64,000 question that I know you're dying to ask is: the police department has a service contract, the fire department doesn't have a service contract. I'll go there.
We knew the answer to that question. We didn't want to have to ask that.
What about, if we go to the rec, I mean, I think one of the things, obviously, you know, I'll ask and answer the question all at one point, and Cole, you add on to it. I mean, I think we're thinking about, you know, one of my first questions was, when we go to the regional communications center, what is this, you know, can we tape this system together, basically, and then turn it over to the regional and say, here you go? We can't, because this will still, obviously, we're not going to replace all of this equipment in that process. You know, obviously, we're still going to need repeaters in Norfolk that will transmit to our officers in Norfolk, or listen to our officers in Norfolk and respond back to the station. So this is not
So you get all the good questions.
this is not throwaway equipment.
Well, I'll ask a naive question too, because you just touched on it. If we go this way, and it seems to me that we don't have a choice. I mean, you're in a crisis, you can't have it not work, so you have to do something. But I hate to see us do something that is expending a reasonable amount of capital that isn't going to be utilized a year and a half from now, when we're regionalized. So I think you just answered the question before I asked it, is that,
Tried to.
so even after the regionalization, this equipment is still required. We
Yes.
still will need it. It's still functional. We're not overlapping costs, overlapping process or anything. This is still in place and would still be needed.
Right. Once the rec is up, the Regional Emergency Communications Center is up and running. This will be the terminus point for all communications originating within the rec. So it is equipment that's integral. It's critical to any transmission of any.
So
any radio.
does this equipment then blend in to the regional capacity, to the regional system? So we're contributing, if you will, this equipment, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Don't mean it that way. But this will be utilized. It's not going to be put in a storeroom and never seen again once we regionalize.
Right. In our conceptual view of this, and this is Chief Stone as well, we feel that once the rec is up and running and there's a director on board, that the long-range plan of that director will be to uniform the type of equipment that's utilized in the field by all four communities
And
that
that'll
are
take
on
time.
board. That'll take time to
Yep.
to accomplish. By us putting the equipment up, the equipment that's been recommended has been endorsed by 3 vendors, and along with our resident who does work in Foxborough, we're looking at formerly it was GE equipment. It's now Harris. That is the hallmark that's utilized by public safety at this point. So that's what we're going to be looking at to use the. As I said, it's been endorsed by all the people that we've had look at the system.
So now the issue is, it's somewhere, it would appear, I know you had a question, but it would appear that we're somewhere in the neighborhood of a $40,000 to $45,000 investment.
Possibly at this point. I think the only variable at this point is the time material aspect, and I think we'll have a much better handle that on Friday. I spoke late this afternoon with the Contronics VP, outlined what our concerns were based upon the analysis that was performed on Friday by people from Connecticut. So I think they have a pretty good grasp. A lot of the work that has to be done is basically tech work from the standpoint of creating levels. One of the problems that we discovered with our system, we need basically a straight line of communication between the console, the comparator, onto the hill. We found that we start from the console at negative 30 dB. So the system is already in negative coming out as soon as the dispatcher hits his transmit key, and it's trying to compensate going back up the line. That was one thing that we found out originally. That could be due to levels that are set. It could be due to some wiring. When we went in behind the console, and you gentlemen have seen that a number of times, when the protective plywood cover was removed in the back of the console, a wire from the police department system fell off and their system went down. So we were able to get that reattached to the phone block and get that back up and running. But it gives you an idea the tenuousness of what technology is in that particular facility.
We have all seen the back of that system, and I don't know how you could ever find where a fallen off wire came from or where it goes with that mess that you got back there.
Oh, we had to find it pretty quick.
I'm sure you did, but
And one of the other benefits of this is going to be to address that morass of wiring back there and to try to clean that up as best and quickly as we possibly can, and see what else needs to be done just to make sure we don't have any other hidden gremlins back there.
Rob, you had a question.
Just this could be an Article 1 transfer into the present year.
Could be, yeah.
Could be. Yeah.
We don't have to do an advisory board.
No.
It just depends on the timing.
Right. Yeah.
Scott?
He's not going to run his budget out of 30.
It's a gotta do. So I mean, I don't know if you need any formal vote from us. I'm sure we'd be more than happy to do it. But the only request I guess I would have is that, and I think it's a statement of the obvious, so I know you'll do it anyway. But just, however we approach this, that we approach it in a way that we have a longer term vision of how this integrates into the regional system, so that we don't either go more than we need that won't get utilized, certainly not less than we need to make it work, but that hopefully we can do it in a way that come 2-3 years from now, when this is all put together, we haven't made an investment that isn't of some value.
Jack has already impressed that fact to me on countless occasions.
I suspected he had.
Cole talked about it earlier. I just, we want to make sure that all the departments have Ford equipment, or whatever the similarity is. It just makes it'll make it a lot easier moving forward.
Do you need a motion from this board?
I don't think so. I mean, I think certainly, Cole's expense budget is not the largest budget in town.
We know you can't cover that through your expense budget.
No, but I think we have the funding there to pay for it, and then we'll make a
Transfer.
We'll do a transfer to fill in the gap afterwards.
Okay. We are in agreement?
Yep.
You have full support.
So Cole, your time's up now.
That's 25%.
Huh?
Can you come up and grab the microphone?
Stevie.
We all know who you are, but for all the folks at home, say hi. Mr. Hamlin, how are you?
Good, you.
Good, sir.
I just want to let you know, the other question that I think Rob brought up, as far as the two repeaters, so if one repeater does go down, that gives us the ability to switch channels, so if a policeman goes down, we have the capability of going back on theirs, to give a temporary use of the radio system also. We've done that before, we've tagged, if the police goes down, they'll come on our side, and vice versa, so that's basically kind of what he's trying to put.
I guess that's what I was asking. Like, couldn't we, flip the switch when one repeater went down? I guess that you can't. It's a short-term solution, though. You can only do that for a little while.
Yeah.
But that doesn't help out with the beepers.
No.
But now, do the repeaters transmit to the beepers? Because don't those pick up way out of town?
No, it's
Really?
limited.
They're just in town?
Well, it depends on where you are, yeah. They don't always pick up.
That doesn't sound very useful. We got all these call firefighters living out of town.
Well, one of the things that we are looking at right now is to come up with a better way for notification and utilizing cell phone technology. And Jack has been in discussion with us on that, of doing something along the lines of CTY, but a public safety grade means of providing notification. And that way, at least we have an assurance that all of the staff's been notified. They've all been notified at the same time, and the system gives you the ability that you can tap back in on your phone that I am responding, and that way the dispatcher would at least have a running card of who's coming back in on that alarm to help.
There must be some sort of Nextel solution. Really?
Well, the Nextel's kind of died.
Pretty much died around
the-
this area.
Oh, type. Okay.
This is a tough town for any any type of phone system.
Oh, we have a tower on the thing. We just hadn't turned it on for the last 3 years.
AT&T's not bad on my side, but
Depends on where you are in town.
Yeah.
It's weird, you know. I can go down the west end of Rentham, up in the Big Apple, up in the west end of Rentham, which you think is the highest spot in Rentham, and I'll have no signal down there.
mhm.
You know, it's a hit or miss.
Yeah.
You know, where the
Yeah.
towers, you run into towers.
Yeah.
Everybody's in the process of taking up towers and adding the towers, so you're kind of going around.
Mhm.
They say it's gonna take, you know, it could take 6 months, could take up to a year, but,
Mm.
you know, we've been back before, we used to have there one couple of nights, we had call wait on cell phones to come back in, so nothing would happen, so you. It's
Okay.
kind of tough to, when you're coming in for emergency stuff like that,
Yeah.
you know.
All right.
Right.
Sorry, can I ask-
Thank
can I
you.
ask a question? So based on Rob's question about the,
Thank you, sir.
just the pages, so as Rob said, most of our call guys are out of town, so they don't even get what we're talking, you know, they don't get the signal anyways?
The contiguous towns generally pick up. The distant towns, Sherburne, where firefighter paramedic Giovanello lives, for instance, firefighter
Joe.
Joe.
Joe?
Giovanello, thank you. Tommy Nicholas, who's in North Attleboro, they'll pick it up. Sometimes it's a little scratchy, but at least they're alerted and they know based upon how the tone came in, the seriousness of the incident, so it gets them started. It's a great segue into the next presentation.
I was just curious, hey, Cole, is this a test that you did it this way, just to have it?
Only you got that one.
That's what I was figuring.
Stevie put that one together.
Thank you, Steve. Every page is upside down.
Just to make sure we're actually looking at them.
All right, so I'll reverse this.
The first two pages are upside down, but the rest is okay.
The first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to thank each member of the board.
Oh, hey. Oh.
For taking the time to meet.
You're not a Yankees fan, are you?
No, he's not.
Okay, good.
We're
That would
trying.
have explained it.
You too, Rob.
Hey, too, Brute.
For taking the time to meet to discuss this, and I've couched this in talking with each of you individually and with Jack that this is probably the most important document ever to come out of the department, perhaps short of when we initiated the ALS effort with the paramedics. I think one of the things that's most important, and it certainly played out during the radio outage, is the need for maintaining 3 staff in the station 24/7. We've moved forward. We've done some things to move that situation ahead. During this radio issue, the first night we brought in 2 extra people to ensure that we had extra staffing, somebody available to make phone calls. But without 3 people in the building, we just can't do the job. And the number of calls that are coming in are increasing. So rather than taking this, you've seen some of the drafts. What you have there is the final. What I'd like to do is just whip through this very quickly. All these are the 4 major building fires we've had in Norfolk so far this year. We've had quite a few. For a small community like us, in 10 months, we've had 4 serious fires. Gee, Jack, what happened to that picture? But anyway, what do each one of these situations have in common? All the shifts are staffed by 3 firefighters, and during that time, hit one more time. Oh, thank you. The fire response complied with the OSHA 2 in, 2 out. We've talked about it a number of times with the board that when we arrive to a building that's on fire, for us to begin the suppression, we need to have 4 people on site. We reach those 4 people again by having the 3 on the shift, either myself or the deputy chief available for response 24/7, so that we're always ready to go. The caveat to that, or the pullback to that position, is if we don't have that number of people, at least we can enter the building with our full protective clothing. We can bring a hose line, conduct a primary search if we need to effect a rescue. The talking points in the presentation are: in 2009, we advised the town that we complied with OSHA. We put that into our operating policy that we would not begin to operate without the 2 in, 2 out. We started back in 2007 with the board, that we started with what we called the level of acceptable risk back in 2007 as we transitioned to all the shifts being staffed by 3 firefighters. When the ambulance left on a transport, it always left us at least 1 person back at the station, and that person was termed to be a decision maker for subsequent calls. And and what that did back in 2007 is it ensured at that point that 95% of the time the station was covered, at least by 1 person. In 2002, the 95% of the staff lived in Norfolk. We fast forward ahead by 10 years, we're down to 50% of the staff that live in Norfolk, which becomes really one of the real problems that we have in terms of getting the staffing out there. Our recall staffing response times are pretty much a basis of where people reside. It's doing it one line at a time, but that's okay. This is a breakdown of our staff. We have 9 people that live in Norfolk. On a recall, it takes them about a 13-minute period to come to the station, grab their protective clothing, get on the apparatus, and respond. The people who live in the contiguous towns, people such as Stevie, we have about 5, and it's 13 plus. And then we get into the non-contiguous towns, such as Tommy, it's 13 plus plus. So that figure just keeps moving out based upon the number of people we have. Right now, we did an analysis of where we stand. We did a 3-year analysis, and we showed that on our full recalls, we get about 4 plus people. One of the things that the board was gracious enough in doing last year was bringing in the 3 new call people, and we said during that time that the purpose of the 3 new call people was to get us in a situation, we did a full recall, that we'd bring back at least a total of 5 constantly. And we're starting to make that transition now. Our company recalls, for instance, if we need to assist the ambulance or do some investigative work for smoke detectors operating, that type of thing, we're averaging a little bit more than 3. But our move has been towards a minimum of staffing of 3, and we're doing that right now. One of the things that we started doing this year, again, the board's gracious enough in approving money for our sick time. We're filling all the shifts for 24 hours. In the past, we would only fill the day and leave the night open. We're now filling any of the unscheduled overtime that comes into us. We're filling on a 24-hour basis. And also this year, when firefighter Hamilton attended the fire academy, we filled all of his shifts on a 24-hour basis.
And he graduated from the University of New Hampshire.
And he graduated from the University of New Hampshire. The proposal that we brought forward, and we've had a chance to talk individually, entails we want to replace, anytime the ambulance responds, we want to call back two members. The option to that, what is the option to that? What did I do, Jack? 2 call back, well, that's what we want to do.
So we had no option.
Yeah. What happened in that translation? Oh, thank you,
There you
Jack.
go.
The option to that, instead of doing 24/7, our option or our fallback position is to do that on a basis of 8A to 6P and do all 7 days in the work week. Or of the calendar week. Reason we picked 8A to 6P is we did an analysis over 3 years of all of our ambulance transports. The majority of our ambulance transports took place during that particular time period. The cost for a year, we've calculated out, is $103,000. One of the things that we broke down in the package that we talked to you about individually is $103,000 is a lot different than $225,000 for 4 people. Each of you brought up in the question when we talked about this of what would be the value of hiring 4 new people. First of all, from where I sit, and I think Jack shares the sentiment, is we don't have any sustainability. But even if we hired 4 new people, that only adds 1 person to the shift. And so again, the ambulance transports, now we have one more person at the station instead of having the 3. What we're looking to do here is to utilize the staff that we had. We met last year, the advisory board. The advisory board asked, when are you looking to hire more people? I said, we're not. I said, we're looking to come up with new ways to utilize the people that we have in town or in the contiguous areas to come back and staff those positions, because it's a much more cost-effective way of doing it, and we feel it's a sustainable way of handling it. Looking to do it, if we had used the fallback position, we calculated that sum to come out to $60,000 for a full year. One of the other things that we talked about was perhaps do this on a basis.
Cole, can I just ask you one quick question, just so I understand the numbers?
Yep.
And you and I chatted, I forgot to ask you this question. Is that a differential from where you are now in the budget, or is that inclusive of what you have in the callback budget now?
I think I lost you in the question.
Is this additional? Or?
This would be
This is
additional.
over and above what's in the budget now.
Over and above. Right now, our callback budget is about just about 146,000. This would add to the callback budget, definitely. One of the things that we are looking at is obviously, we've talked about individually with everyone. The callback is a 3-hour minimum. On the ambulance callbacks, we anticipate that the person would be in station at least for a minimum of an hour and a half is what the turnaround time is, even going to Norwood. By the time you get to Norwood, drop the patient off, file your paperwork, and return. That's how, and get the ambulance back in service is generally that period of time. There are discussions that are taking place with the union in terms of that. We know, and we're certainly very sensitive to the consternation that has been echoed, and that we are seriously looking at that. Right now, we don't have anything. I will let you know that the union was exceedingly gracious this past week. We have, as you know, the dispatch policy is part of the union contract from a safety standpoint. In the union contract, we stipulate that every time we have a fire alarm at the prisons, it's a full recall. We've changed that internally over the last 2.5 years to make it a shift alarm, and we do that from the standpoint that the prisons have many people down there, and if indeed there is a problem, when we receive their fire alarm, we generally receive a 911 call shortly thereafter, and we know what the situation is. The play that we're getting from the union, and we've done this on a cooperative basis, is we're going to shift that back to shift alarms only. And what we'll do is the shift officer basically serves as an acting chief, has the authority to initiate any type of callback he feels is necessary based upon the type of call that comes in. So from here on out, and using Bay State as an example, during the first 9 months of this year, we've run to Bay State close to 60 times for alarms. Out of those alarms, there's been a half a dozen that we've initiated either a full recall or a company recall. Recently, we had an electrical fire. Not only was a full recall, but it brought a ladder company from Walpole, an engine company from Rentham that particular day. So we want to do is what we. I'm sorry.
So just for folks who don't, can you explain the difference between a full
Yes,
and a
thank
company?
you. A full recall is a dispatch where we bring back all of the available personnel, whether they're off-duty, career, or call. When we utilize a company recall, we take all of the staff, regardless of career status or call status, and they're lumped into what's called Company 1 and Company 2. When we do a company recall, we're basically only recalling potentially half of the staff. And from the statistic that you saw, that even with the staffing now of about 18 people, we're only averaging on a company call a little bit more than 2, and for a full recall a little bit more than 4. So you get an idea of how those numbers mesh into how that format takes place.
So if you've got 18, we have 18, right?
We're about 18, yes.
18. So 3 are on, there's 15 off. So out of the 15, you're getting back 4.
Yes.
4.5. And out of 7, you're getting back 2.
That's a good way to look at it, yes. Accurate. Scott?
Question on the costs, whether it's the 24/7 or 8 to 6, that's based on past history, right? Because they only get recalled if the ambulance goes out, in which the ambulance does go out quite frequently. But do you know what I mean? So that number, can it be higher than that? Can it be lower than that?
And that's we projected out on a three-year average. I have to pull the number, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but we gave you the three-year average in there. It was 500 plus calls of actual transports. The ambulance generally responds, I want to say the number is closer to 700 times a year. There are a number of times we don't transport. The only time this plan would go into effect is when the ambulance actually leaves Norfolk on a transport. Right. If it doesn't leave Norfolk on a transport, we don't call anybody back. The trigger time on this is solely based upon once the shift officer calls a dispatch and says the ambulance is committed to a transport, that would be a trigger in this plan to move that ahead.
So it is variable. So, I mean, again, you could have this weird year where there's lots of
Yeah,
transports, and that number could be 200,000 or
And
300,000.
we're pretty much in there.
been
And looking at all the data, it was pretty much right in there. It stays. We're consistent. It's strange. Norfolk works out statistically really strange. We stay pretty much flat line on our ambulance transports and our overall fire calls. We may fluctuate a little bit here and there, but if you look overall, we generally hold in the 1,400 to 1,500 call a year. I mean, we incrementally have gone up, but nothing dramatic as far as that increase.
Yeah, it seems like month to month we have a lot of fluctuations, but
When it
when
goes
you
over
look at a whole
time.
year, we stay
And right now, we're into month 10. I think in September we had I want to say 4 full recalls. In August, we may have had 2. I mean, the number of times we're bringing everybody back has declined dramatically this year. The seriousness of the incidents has increased dramatically, but the volume of calls in terms of that number is gone. A lot of that, though, I attribute to, and we've discussed this internally, is we have the ability, we call triage, and when the call comes into the 911 center, the dispatchers are really good about giving the officer the heads up, and the officer a lot of times will take a call that would maybe perhaps look at a full recall, but based upon the hearing what the call was all about, the shift officer might say, okay, I'll go with a company and see what happens. If we need more help, we'll call for it. The officers themselves are really in tune with this because they know that what we're trying to accomplish right now is to ensure that when someone takes a sick time, took a sick day, or they're on jury duty or things like that, they know that what we're trying to do is to ensure that that 24-hour period is filled. And the union has been good working with us because we've split that 24 hours down, and the 10 hours goes to the career staff during the day, the 14-hour overnight goes to a call member. So that's how we fill that. And again, we're trying to stretch, as Jack Kelly, the Lieutenant Vice President of the union, said, what we're trying to do is to stretch that number out as far as we possibly can. So why now? Good question. Our incidents are increasing a little bit, and delayed mutual aid response has become a problem. Back in July, we ran a week where we called 3 times on mutual aid to serious fires. We had a significant delay because each one of those incidents, the ambulance was out. Also, we had our first real serious problem in June where the ambulance had transported. We had a kitchen fire. With 1 person left in the station. We used Rentham and Franklin right away. And again, you look at that delay. Our business is compressing time and distance. You know, obviously, we're relying on mutual aid for first water on the fire. It becomes problematic. And Rob has taken time to come to a number of our training programs to live fire evolutions and has seen firsthand how quickly when you look at the time the fire develops, that time is certainly within 13 minutes. The building is in really dire situation.
You got Rob in full gear yet?
No. They don't make it my size.
You're behind. Yeah, they do.
That's the middle part that's the problem.
It stretches. It stretches.
So why not use mutual aid? Because this is a local issue. The way Norfolk County runs mutual aid is we need to exhaust our resources first before we bring mutual aid in. And the other thing that we need to ensure is we use a lot of mutual aid. As you know, we've divided Norfolk in half at Main Street. Everything to the east of Main Street is a first response for Franklin. Everything west of Main Street is a first response from Rentham. We're now employing them more than we've had in the past. So we want to make sure that when we're utilizing that resource, that we have the ability to reciprocate and be able to, and by reciprocating mean that we're able to get the apparatus on the road as quickly as possible. A number of discussions that we had about this is what to do, to look at it as a budgetary situation for the next year. I mean, obviously, that's going to be a minimum of a 10% increase on the fire department overall budget. We talked about perhaps doing a 3-month trial. And if we did that, we looked at that as being about $30,000 and running it just during the day and running it January, February, March. There may be a number of different ways that Jack has expressed his desires to me. I can't emphasize enough what we're trying to accomplish here. Without 3 people in the station, we truly aren't a fire department. We continue to provide emergency medical assistance, and going back to Ramish's days on the board, he's always maintained that we're more of an EMS group than a fire group, and generally that holds true in terms of the types of calls we respond to. The thing we have to be very cautious of, and we need to have awareness, it regards of time when we have to respond in a fire mode, and without the 3 people waiting for the recall to come back, waiting for the mutual aid, is just a really unsatisfactory way of doing it. I know the money is exceedingly tight. Every time I've come before the board and have asked for types of things or made requests, it's always couched by that thinking. But I would hope that the board would be able to analyze this further and make a recommendation to the fire department of what you think how we should proceed. I can provide the information. I can outline what the scope of the problem is. We've done this a lot over the last few years, but I think this is the most cogent document. It's the most salient in terms of identifying the points, and I would leave it with the board with that for hopefully some type of endorsement or action if the board seems fit to do so. So with that, I again thank you very much for your time. I know each of you spent a great deal of time. You asked a number of very good questions, and I'm glad you did. And I'm willing to handle those questions, obviously, in the public forum tonight.
Cole, I think each of us has talked individually with you about this. I think. Hey, Scott, have you had a chance? Okay. And as always, you make a very compelling argument for your position. What I'd like to suggest to the board is that you need to give us some time to digest this.
I would think so. That's fair, obviously.
I would not be prepared to even make a recommendation to you tonight because we don't have $103,000 sitting around loose in the budget. So
No.
we need to really kind of think this through. Each of us can individually. I'd like to sit down with you and talk this through. Your argument, it is compelling. And rather than offering any suggestions, I need some time to even though I chatted with you about this now several weeks ago, and we did more than chat. We got into some good long discussions on it.
Spirited.
No, it wasn't that way at all. I mean, you have all of our utmost respect for you and your guys and the work that you do.
Thank you.
Both police and fire. You've heard us say it many times, and it isn't said, without full understanding and respect that you guys do a phenomenal job. And we don't want our citizens at risk. Otherwise, there's no point in having it. We have ALS to help to provide opportunities for people to survive very difficult situations, and to increase the odds, if you will, and to not take the appropriate steps to ensure that we maintain that standard. I don't think passes good judgment. What we have to figure out is how to do it.
Sure. I would like to avail.
And that's going to take some work.
Exactly, and I would avail, your contact of any member of the staff, the deputy chief, any of the shift officers, firefighters, and anyone that you think that you have any rapport with. I mean, please reach out to them.
We have rapport with all of them.
And so,
all great guys.
Anytime you want to contact them, stop by. They'll even buy you coffee.
Perhaps
they're that good.
Perhaps they could stop by the open house this Saturday, Cole.
Why?
Check them out.
I was just thinking about that, Jack.
You didn't have a slide on that. I was surprised.
There's no banner back here.
Mike Finland will let me know about that.
Rather than getting into ancillary, if you gentlemen are agreeable, rather than getting into sort of disenfranchised questions that may not be too coherent at this time, why don't we put this back on the agenda for our next meeting? That gives us 2 weeks. I think our next meeting is 2 weeks. That'll give us 2 weeks to visit with you individually and think through different options, and then come on back and let's see if we can't come up with some solutions.
That'd be fine.
We can't ignore it. I think we're all in agreement with that. We cannot ignore it.
If you think this is a document that should be attached to the town website, certainly have no problem.
Let us have an opportunity to study it.
Okay.
And come back with a recommendation, and then I think clearly, once a decision's made, we need to make as much available to anybody that wants to see it as to why we've made that decision. I'm not suggesting that.
No, I understand.
It's just that it's premature because we don't know where we're going with this yet, other than there's a compelling argument that we have to go someplace.
Excuse me.
Cole, one question I haven't asked you that
Is that agreeable with you, Scott?
Yes, that's fine with me.
I feel
No, it's fine. No,
awkward that
I
I'm
got that.
turned this way. I apologize.
what would you expect to find from a trial period? I mean, obviously having two officers in the state, two additional officers in the station when the ambulance goes to Norwood is going to be a good thing. I mean, what else would you expect to, what other kinds of data would you expect to find from that if we were able to find the way to fund a trial
I
period?
suppose the way to look at it is the null hypothesis, that the number of people that we have available locally couldn't sustain this. And if that's the case, then we need to know that. Pete and I, the deputy chief and I, have had a long conversation about this, and that's the obvious concern that rolls from this is would we basically wear out the people that we have locally to respond, not only in Norfolk, but the contiguous and non-contiguous communities. We don't know, and I don't think we can adequately answer that question until we give this a run. I think obviously, and we've had this part of the conversation at 2 a.m. At 2 a.m. when the ambulance transports, the likelihood, realistically, that we're going to get people to come down and cover probably isn't that great. But we need to take a good look and see if in fact that is the case. We may find the other issue that might come up is we may find that we're only getting the one person, and that's what we're going to get. But we need to know that definitively. We need to look at the times, and once we see some hard data, then we can certainly adjust what those dollars come out to.
There is one piece of data that I would like to see that isn't in here, and that's the frequency of the callback actually being utilized.
Yep, and that's something we can do. Unfortunately, with the way
And by
yeah.
shift, if you can do that.
We can. Unfortunately, the way the system is set up, it'll take some time, but I can do that for you. And that's one of the things that Jack had asked before, and that's obviously not in this analysis.
Because that might help us come up with a solution if we have that data. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to play some percentages because we don't have $103,000
No.
to write a check for. So
No.
we've got to figure out some way to implement this in a way that we can manage it within the operational budgets. And having that data might help us figure that out.
We can do that.
Okay. You agreeable?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yes.
A couple of things that were nagging at me. I know in some instances I've heard you say that you responded to a call and folks from Rentham covered the station. Does that mean they're actually physically in the station?
Yes. Whenever we have a multiple alarm fire, there's always an out-of-town company that comes. The way our system is set up, for every working fire that we respond to, Foxborough's the cover engine. However, what we're finding is that with the number of people that we can muster on the initial alarm isn't that great. Foxborough generally ends up coming to the fire, and Walpole's the next engine. Walpole comes into cover. If we need more at that point, we strike a second alarm. That would give us engine company from Plainville to the fire, Foxborough obviously to the fire, Walpole. We get a Sharon Ladder company, and then we also get Bellingham that then covers our station.
But nobody covers for medicals like that.
No. Rentham does have a policy. They used it many years ago because of budget cutbacks. They withdrew it. They're going to be reinstituting their callback policy, I believe, next week is what the chief had told me. They've just received the funding. Franklin, obviously, because of the number of staff that they have, they're running their shifts now with 11. They'll get to a certain level of staffing before they institute a recall. Plainville, every time Plainville responds an ambulance outside of going to Sturdy, if they have to go to Norwood or any other hospital, they replace those two people on the shift right away. Foxborough, with their number of people, they do the same thing. If they're involved in more than one medical transport, they're recalling. Walpole, more than one medical transport, they're also recalling. So the surrounding towns do maintain a set on their callback. The one balance point when you get to the larger departments, such as a Foxborough, a Walpole, or a Franklin, their staffing is such that they're not recalling as obviously as much as we recall. Say, for instance, we have a car fire, we're recalling, where those towns will not recall. They'll handle it because they have adequate numbers to handle the initial call.
Okay.
I have 4 questions for you here, Cole, that I'll just give you, that I think
I'm ready.
some data. No, I'll just hand it
Yep.
to you.
Okay.
He still wants to meet Joe Vanilla.
Huh? I missed that one.
You got to know who Joe Vanilla is.
Oh,
Charlotte Joe Vanilla.
Can I ask another? Do you mind?
of course you can.
Have we seen any appreciable increase in call volume out of the new age-restricted neighborhoods in town?
We're starting to.
Yeah.
When
They weren't
Getting older,
aged
you know,
enough.
That's not the way to put it, Cole.
Rob asked,
So you're not a politician, we understand, okay.
I'm not running for any office, no. And to all of those at your River's Edge, I love you very
I wasn't
dearly.
even gonna say that. So it's starting to, you're starting
Yeah,
to see more?
and you know, we anticipate that will pick up the Pin Oaks complex. We rarely go there. River's Edge, we're starting to see a few more medicals. Most of the calls out there are for the carbon monoxide smoke detectors activating with no signs and symptoms, no evidence of smoke. So that's handled strictly by the shift. They'll go out and handle the investigation. Meeting House, I mean, we continually go there for false alarms due to cooking. Is our predominant. We are starting to see some medicals coming out now of Meeting House. So those are the major areas that we're seeing at this point.
My favorite is still the one on Thanksgiving,
The turkey?
In the bag.
in the bag.
Turkey in the bag.
Put the turkey in the bag, and it was a brown paper bag.
2 years running on that particular one.
You're kidding.
No, it's 2 years running on that.
Same house?
No, fortunately.
If you could, are those, did I write those in a way that you can read it?
I'll call you.
Sometimes?
I'll
All
call
right.
you.
It's just 4 questions that I think would help me sort of sort through some way of implementing this.
Okay. I got 2 more quick things. And these are pretty easy. One of the things that we wanted to do is we ran into recently a situation where we brought a new hire in, and the new hire left us very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
We want to do is to try to come up with some fair means of handling this so that we try to recoup any of the costs associated with bringing the new hire in. I came across this by reading the Hartford Current out of Connecticut, and this was brought up by police
You know we
department.
do have papers and people that don't live in Connecticut. You knew that, didn't you?
I bet you there are communications consultants from
Consultants too, yeah.
Massachusetts, a newspaper or two.
Come on,
There's one here today.
you're pulling my leg.
There's a baseball team, or at least there used to be in Massachusetts.
Let's not talk about
Let's not go there. Yeah.
See, I'm so polite. That was a free throw. Anyway,
That was a softball.
Anyway, this is being done in the towns of Cromwell, Simsbury, Canton, and Avon, I believe. I received the boilerplate of this reimbursement agreement through the Cromwell police chief, and what they're doing is they're looking to recoup large amounts of money. I would ask for the board's review, and I've talked about this with Jack at length, that we institute this based upon a pre-hire, so it doesn't become a contractual issue, first of all. And second of all, that we come up with some real numbers on there. I think the most important costs to us are the physical, the PAT, and the gear that goes hand in hand. I think when we start to get beyond that, the numbers become very significant, 10 to 15,000. If we take into account if we have somebody who comes to us, goes through the 12-week academy and comes out, I don't think it's going to be realistic for us. So I think it's realistic for us to expect that if we put them in protective clothing at a cost of over $5,000, that we should be looking to recoup that if it's over a specific period of time. We can't absorb that.
No,
And-
I think we're all in agreement. We had a specific incident for those at home where this did occur, and
And the clothing can't be reused, right? It's sized, I mean, but it can't be.
And that's what we run into. If right now, if
even
we
raw, it can't fit
he
raw.
thas to hire someone the
Yeah,
exact
same size, like you
and it
have
doesn't
a
always work.
profile.
Yeah.
They call it profiling.
We have
right?
an opening for a 6'3".
Call profiling.
6'3" this
Yeah.
time, or 5'9".
I know Mr. Kelly is here, but I'll just, I'm sure, I shouldn't say that, but the union would have no issue with this.
It's pre-hired,
be a
it sounds
non-
like, right?
Well, it is, but I mean, there'd be no union issue with this.
I think Tommy's got his hat pulled down tight. That's Tommy Nichols.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought it was,
Jim, do you
was
want to try
Jack.
these? You wanna try-
It still looks like Jack. Sorry about that. I thought it was Jack Kelly. I pull back the question. Let me ask you, Chief. I assume there's no union issue with this.
Well, I haven't had long discussion
Okay.
with Stevie or with Jack at this point. I wanted to get this get out in front. We closed out applications for the replacement hire today. We're going to be initiating the review process probably the next couple of weeks, so we will probably tender an offer sometime in early November, and that person would be starting January 1st with us. So we wanted to come up with a review of this, recommendations from the board. We probably would, I would think, want to have council take a quick
Right.
peek at it as well. As I said, we haven't penciled in we haven't penciled in even numbers, but you know I think the gear, the physical, and the PAT, those are the hard costs that come down to us in turning people around. If we have somebody who joins with us, we get them through the 12-week academy, they come out and they decide to leave. I think the time that the money that we spend in the overtime during that 12-week period, that's not realistic. We can't, but I think we can certainly.
I don't think you'd have any basis for recouping
Yeah,
that.
it would be hard, and I don't even know if council looks at this, if this is potentially a non-binding situation, but we got to try something.
Well, you say this is being used in several towns already.
It's being
So
used, yeah,
I
in Connecticut.
my
In
best-
Connecticut.
I know it's Connecticut, but my best guess is Connecticut's got more
What
lawyers.
happens there?
Connecticut's got as many lawyers as Massachusetts, so my best guess is that they've looked at it as well.
So
Okay.
I have that, and the last thing, so you can get rid of me.
One more?
One more.
One more.
One more.
Good at that.
All fire over.
And Cole, will you come up with the X amount of dollars, or you want us, or you just?
No, I think I'd like to do is sit down with Jack and come up with that, and in concert with the department, so that we get a realistic look at
Can we
that.
get the Cliff Note version of this one, Chief?
Yeah, this is real quick.
Okay.
The radio box, we have the radio box system installed. We hope to have it up and running. A couple of things just to finish up with Freeman Kennedy. Once we have the radio box system up and running, we have the ability to take alarms in from the private sector. There are a number of towns that have a myriad ways of charging for this.
Yeah.
The proposal I'd like to put it forward to the board tonight would be an endorsement that we allow private alarms to come in, private facilities come in, and that we come up with an amount. My recommendation is $185. I think it's fair and reasonable that the amount of work that goes into monitoring an alarm from the buildings is merely a keystroke in dispatch. We've had the system up and running on a temporary basis just so the dispatchers can have some familiarity with it. I don't think totally we're looking for a lot of alarms. The 8 condominium units on Meeting House, the property management firm has already approached us. They would like to get involved, and there's a few other people out there that are aware of the radio box system.
This is a no-brainer to me.
So that's
Just
Cliff.
my view anyway. I would definitely do this, and I would definitely charge for it.
And where the board saw fit, where that money goes, I mean, that's fine. The only thing I'd like to do is make sure that we can take the supplies out of that and battery replacements that come from time to time. But those are the only, and the software rental. Those are the only expenses that we will incur on the system. Once we're up and running on the system and we go to the region, this equipment will be moved from Norfolk over to Rentham. It'll be part of the dispatch system over there. Foxborough doesn't charge, but they just called this morning, and they're having their town council review their letter of understanding, and it looks like they're going to go out and get into the charging field as well. One of the things we are looking to do is Department of Corrections are on the hit list, and that we'd be looking to charge the Department of Corrections for all the alarms that we presently monitor.
Just a thought.
185,000 for them.
Indeed.
Well,
185 for everyone else.
and Jack, we have a couple of things that we want to talk to the Department of Correction about. Just as an aside, I think it would make sense if we go at this in one, not disjointed, so to speak. I mean, our biggest opportunity with them is a well.
Well,
Unless
that's
you can get a public
what we
safety
think
bill.
is the biggest opportunity.
Well,
That's not what
biggest
they think is the-
opportunity for discussion.
Well, okay. We've had 3 other discussions on another item.
I know, and another item, you're correct. But I just, when it comes to Department of Correction anyway, Jack, if we could just be somewhat, I know the issues are different, but it might be beneficial to approach this collectively,
Well, that's my list of topics with them.
That's my only
We
point.
do have a number of.
just rather than disjointed.
Sure.
Cole, is this per building or per associate, like Meeting House, I considered one? Because you said
That
many
would-
at the.
That
police
would be
station.
8 buildings because they'd actually have to put a radio in each one.
Okay, so it's
If-
8
if-
times 185
Right.
roughly? or-
If they had linked all those buildings together, we could just make it one, but the buildings aren't interconnected.
Same thing with like the DOC, is there a lot more, you monitor more than just one alarm, it's
Right.
multiple.
MCI Norfolk off property. There are a number, but MCI, with the exception of the wastewater treatment plant on Campbell, all their buildings on that property are connected back to their gatehouse, their entrance facility on the property. So we're probably looking at the wastewater treatment plant, MCI Norfolk, Pondville, and Bay State, and then also the industries building in Pondville. So those would be the number. That would be the number of buildings that we'd look. Right now, the industries building is moving forward to get their alarm connected.
And you're ready to do this now?
We're ready. We're just waiting for the final sign off from Freeman Kennedy. We have a couple loose ends to get Freeman Kennedy and H.O. Day up.
Well, we don't want to charge them.
No, we're not. No, town buildings, obviously.
Right.
We'd like to get the Grange in here. We're trying to work something out to get the Grange building in here. And KP, we're set. There's just all the information's been entered from KP. The vendor at this point is just waiting for the go-ahead from Jocelyn Lesser to finish their work, and once that's done, the 3 schools will be turned on. The big advantage this is you save the $80 a month phone fee. It's $40 a month for your phone lines. You need 2 phone lines and a fire alarm. And individually, the private sector generally charges about $300 a year for monitoring alarms. So obviously, you add those numbers together, it's quite beneficial. I'm in discussions with Bob Bullock right now, talking about some of the town buildings and how we can go about doing that in a systematic basis as well, so that we can start saving money on the town side in terms of monitoring the alarms.
Comments, anyone?
So like you said, it sounds like a no-brainer, but does the building have to buy some piece of equipment? Is there some other cost?
There is a front-end cost. It's about $2,000 for the equipment and the installation.
So there's the
So
upfront. So you have to recoup that
right,
later on your
they-
$40
right,
a month savings you're talking about. So
Yeah,
it's not
that's
day one.
That's where the recoup is. Yes.
Okay. And that-
Rob? You have that pensive look.
I just hate fees. I
You and me both.
hate fees, hate government. But
Well, we're doing
Try-
a service here. It's not a fee. It's a service. I mean,
Try sitting down in the station when somebody comes in with plans for new construction for a house, and we're taking $20 out of them, and then we get $50 to do this. It's insane.
nickel and diamond people
We're-
to death.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more.
Do you have
but
a
that's what it
monitoring
is.
system in your house?
My kids.
Hey,
Dad, we're on fire!
the dog.
The dog. I have a cat. That's no
With
help.
that, I want to thank you ever so much for the indulgence of all these conversations, and as always, it's been entertaining, and if nothing else.
Ooh, I think he's being condescending.
Would you mind quickly just introducing Jack Kelly and his friends back there?
Ooh, I think he's being condescending.
Take the hat. I mean, come on, the hat just threw it. That's how Jack wears his hat. It's always pulled down. And, yeah.
As Grace Slick said at Woodstock, we
Cole,
have
thanks.
the usual boys, plus it's Stevie, Dougie, and Pedro.
Glad to see you guys came in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time again.
guys.
Looking forward to this.
Cole, we got to pay him more so they can live in Norfolk. That's your solution.
We're working on it right here. We have a gentleman that's looking for some place to live in Norfolk.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Cole.
We need done the affordable housing.
In fact,
Could have done the-
Rob, I think if he just needs a room or two, if
I could rent out something.
you got rent on.
You got a spare bedroom?
Well, soon. Daughter's going to college.
I have one.
I got 3.
Yeah, Scott's got
Because
room.
of-
So,
Scott's
okay,
room.
and we don't have any hotels, so we got to open some guest houses.
That's right.
Is that your pile?
Yes.
Okay.
Watch you- I told you, Scott. I warned you about
You
that.
have warned me about that. I can put it on
You
the-
gotta put your name on stuff.
We'll have to vote this, though. I mean,
We do.
The fees
Uh,
have to be levied by us.
Actually, while he was here, I was going to ask if anybody wanted to make a motion.
I will move to establish a fee of $185 per annum for connection via radio box fire alarm.
How about just a monitoring fee for fire alarm?
There you go.
Second.
Further discussion?
Just for clarity, he talked about trying to take some of the money out of for batteries and whatever software updates and stuff.
But we
like
haven't decided where the fee would go.
Goes
Well,
to general fund.
that. It's gotta go to the general
Unless we
fund.
set up a revolver, but that would be silly for this.
Would it?
You took all my thunder, yes.
Why would it be silly to set up a revolving account for this?
I'm not a big revolving fund fan. I think we're talking about a limited amount of money that he's.
Well, 1,500.
Well, I was going to say, it may not
No,
be as
the revenues would be a little more significant. I think the expenses on that would
I
revolve
don't think
back
they-
would
yeah.
be relatively small, and we could just budget those.
Okay. That'd be fine. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, Cole, we meant to do that while you were here.
I'm sure he'll know shortly.
Okay. That was supposed to start at 7:30 and end at 8:10.
Well, then, by Cole standards, we're way ahead of schedule.
Okay, town warrant.
Did we decide what to do with the hunting article?
Want to start with that?
As printed,
I would,
It's fine.
minus January 1.
Second that. Is that a motion?
I think it was.
We already moved last week to take that long.
it's actually, we'd have to move it, we'd have to change it. It's already in here. Well, it's our article, so we can redo this.
Well, last time we were here, we moved to remove the by January 1 for the upcoming calendar
We
year.
did,
Right.
correct.
So that's not there anymore, even though it is.
Yeah. So I would just leave it the way it's printed in the warrant.
Agree.
You agree?
Yeah.
We agree.
Agree. Absolutely.
I've been checking the bylaws, and it doesn't appear the ZBSC has any sort of, function to change other people's,
I have one more housekeeping
not ZBSC, bylaw state.
piece for the,
Yeah,
and then we can generally discuss these articles, but an unnumbered article, it's on page 7. To see if the town will vote to amend the zoning, this was submitted by the Bylaw Study Committee, to amend the Norfolk zoning map by adding the following parcels to the B1 district outside the Business Core District. Map 14, Block 49, basically known as Kids Place, and Map 14, Block 749, Lot 11, Paul Kelly's land. The Kids Place is on this in error. I talked to the secretary of the
CBSC.
thank you. And we had, there was discussion on this during their meeting, and we gave feedback that this wasn't the time to do that. According to the secretary and the conversation I had with him today, that in fact is error. Now, we have a member of that committee here. He tells me that was not voted on and that you had agreed not to bring that forward. Am I in error?
I'm just observing.
You're just observing. Very good. Well, that's what the secretary told me. Anyway, so I would like to, I guess we have to open the warrant to remove this.
We could check the recording of the meeting, as the ZBSC falls under the bylaw that requires recording of all the meetings. We could audit, yes.
Well,
yes.
I would like to, I would
Season that too.
strongly recommend that we open this, remove this. If there's something we have to sit down with the zoning committee to discuss, we'll do that.
I move to reopen the warrant.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And
I move to remove the language, map 14, block 49, lots 4 and 21.
again, better known as Kids Place. Remove that from the recommendation to add to the B1 district. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that article reads now only Lot 49, Lot 11, Block 49, Lot 11, which is Mr. Kelly's property.
I don't want to step out of place, but I just before you go closing the warrant, I want to finish our discussion. Just
Wasn't going to do that.
that's why I didn't want to. I trying to do that as politely as I could.
Okay, let's start. I mean, if it's your pleasure, I think if we can just walk through this briefly, we don't have to spend a lot of time. If everybody's comfortable with the articles, it's just an issue that we understand it. We don't have to vote and agree. We can have that debate on town floor. We do need to at least have a majority agreement on the ones brought forward by this board. But I think we already have that, but we can double check it.
We'll see.
But anything brought forward by another board, if we have issues or disagreements with it, we'll debate that on town floor. So anything on page 1?
Can I ask? Just goes back to the earlier comment about when we were talking about capital. So I mean, I suspect you as the liaison will be working with the capital committee. I'm certainly planning on being there a lot myself. Do you want to not even entertain borrowing, or do you want to leave that for a later discussion? And I know that's always something that obviously this board keeps as under their authority. The capital committee has always decided what to buy. I guess I'm just asking when do you want to get into that discussion, if you want to get into that discussion.
You want to start, Rob?
I mean, I could really make a case for putting at least the cruisers on a leasing, on a borrowing schedule. Doing it under the 2.5 cap, so it's not a separate 2.5 vote. But, you know, we run into this feast and famine thing. Like this year, we've got 3 cruisers on there as a potential. You know, how many cruisers do we actually use? So we're replacing a lot of old ones. You know, and it'd be better to do it like we tried to do it, you know, 2 at a time, 2 at a time, 2 at a time.
Scott, you have thoughts?
Sort of like go back to the whole schedule thing we had in the past.
Yeah.
But like you said, we don't know when we have money again. I guess if the economy turns and when things continue good, that's all well and good. We have some money now. You know. I'm not opposed to the leasing idea either. I just know that seems that we get good use out of the car. Like I don't, like, you know, like that one car with 400,000 miles. Jim said, and the sanded body was welded, so they don't, and then they get reused within the town anyway. So it's not. So when they put so many miles, I'm not sure what kind of leasing things you get for police cars.
Well, no, not leasing.
You know,
Borrowing.
Oh, borrowing. Okay.
Pay, you know,
Pay it that way.
so that we have a regular rotation on these things.
Yeah, we don't, the only thing we ever leased is the ambulance, and that was basically free money for all intents and purposes when we did that.
Plus,
I wouldn't be opposed to borrowing for some of these capital items. I mean, what did we get? We got 2.2, 2.3 last time,
Yeah.
somewhere in that neighborhood.
Twos, yeah. Sometimes you can get in the ones, depending on your timing.
I would, can you get us an updated copy of the debt
Yep.
and what's coming off the books next year? That would be helpful. I wouldn't object to keeping that, and this is debt within our operating budget
Right,
that I'm
yeah.
talking about. I wouldn't object to, again, speaking only for me, as long as we can get that 500,000 put into the stabilization fund, I wouldn't object to keeping that debt level within the operating budget. And so I guess with that data, working it backwards,
Okay.
we could
See
take a
if we
look.
can
Normally,
borrow.
yeah, so normally we could, I think that'll give us a number as to what we might, it's just my opinion,
Yeah.
but it's a way to at least start, to take a look at it.
And you gave us some. Didn't you have it scheduled, Cheryl?
Yeah, we can get it. It's
Yeah,
easy
it
to
had-
get.
Yeah, you've got it, yeah, it's an easy printout, but I don't want to increase that number.
That's fine.
But if I could keep it level, I think we can operationally handle that. That might give us, over 5 years, a pretty good chunk of money. I don't want to hazard a guess, because I don't remember how much debt is being reduced off the books next year.
couple other
But it's a
things.
place to start.
So, what's the state law on the maximum we can borrow for, Jack? Outside of 2.5, in our own, under 2.5, you know, in our own budget. Because, you know, well, here's where I'm going.
Isn't it, I think?
I thought it was 10, but I'm not sure.
Okay, I thought it was 5. But
I think there's, oh, go ahead.
Well,
I could be wrong.
You could be right.
I could be wrong.
because there was a lot of talk at the state level about much longer term borrowing, because a lot of the things you build last 25 years. If we build another fire station, you're going to be using it for the next 30 years.
Well, there was a proposal to extend the funding from 20 years to 30 years, but I don't think that passed.
No, we haven't utilized it yet, or if it's passed it, I wasn't
We're not aware of it. But there was discussion about extending, but that's a debt exclusion.
Right, now, why couldn't we enter into a contract for under the 2.5 limit? You know, just, could you put together some numbers on a $7 million building over 30, a $10 million building over 30?
We have those, actually, I have those numbers with me. I can give them to you.
Okay.
We've spent a lot of time taking a look at that.
Because, you know, if you get into the
I'm
half a
pretty sure I
million
do
dollar area, then you're getting into, well, this might be a possibility if we really squeeze some of the existing under the
Yeah.
cap debt.
How about that? Not bad, huh?
Also trying to build the town hall.
There you go.
That way.
Without a debt exclusion.
That help you?
As far as the budget's going.
No, it's KP Regional School
Yeah,
District.
you'll find the numbers a little different than what you think.
This is for 11 million.
Yeah.
You gotta be a little realistic.
Well, and that's reduced.
Yes,
The problem is all the costs have gone up.
yeah. No, but this doesn't have the yearly cost.
I have that number.
Okay.
I have
Well,
those
that's what.
They're probably in that pile as well. But But short-term, in terms of, we can do that, but short-term, if we can look at the debt,
Sure.
see what's coming off the books. And actually, we should probably make that decision quickly, because if we're going to pull a chunk of that out and we're willing to finance that within our operational budget, we could, in some respects, take that off the plate of capital.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, wait,
Different.
yeah, in other words, if we're going to, don't you think? I mean, if we're going to, just hypothetically, if we're going to finance, and I'm making just as an example, if we were going to finance all of the trucks for DPW, we should, and we could manage it. Obviously, we can't, but if we could, we should pull that off of the plate for capital, because we wouldn't be using that resource to fund it.
Yeah,
And it would only cloud up the requests for them. It would only free them up to utilize more money for other requests.
I guess my thought would be that we would only use, I would favor using debt finance for those absolute things that we know we're going to do.
Well, we're saying the
And-
same
and
thing. I was
cycle
just
it.
giving an example.
Yeah, well, and I feel like the DPW trucks, if you give too much of an ability, the needed trucks go from 2 to 6.
It was just an example, Rob.
Okay,
It wasn't a design.
Well, they have a number here, they can increase it, but we already know, they can come back and now they find out, based on this conversation, tend to hear us, but I have this, so I'm gonna go back to, you
I
said
mean,
you only
we
need.
we know we need
3 trucks.
vehicles for DPW and for police. We know that.
I was thinking of things you buy every year. We're not going to buy DPW every year. We are buying police every year. I would also love us to get out of the business of recycling the cop cars, because my gut feeling
My
is
next question. Yeah.
they're not worth it.
Well,
Talk
cost
to
like
Paul,
repair, right.
Paul Vito. The cost to keep these suckers going, plus they're the worst pigs around on gas.
Yeah,
So their operational costs are ridiculous.
unfortunately, we got ourselves into a dilemma, because, there is a definite advantage to having the same vehicle in service in terms of repairs, maintenance, things of that nature. And I agree with you. But, it's going to take time to facilitate a transition on this.
We've got a lump.
No, well, maybe I misunderstand you, but right now, it would be really good time to have this discussion, because right now we've got the assessor's vehicle, the building department's number 2 vehicle, and there's another one that
The Bronco?
the Bronco. The Bronco's out. The Bronco's dead. That was a death trap, for lack of a better word. And the assessor's vehicle is not much better. I thought there was another one, but I guess not.
Well,
And you can talk about Hillary's car. That's always a, it's-
DPW has a car. The DPW chief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it's a good discussion we need to have. Yeah.
I don't want us to, I don't want to sound like we're some $30 billion state organization, but when Romney took over Massachusetts, the first thing he did was take away all the cars and go to a pure pool.
Yeah.
I mean, why did the assessors need a car that's dedicated only to the assessors?
No, well, I certainly wouldn't mind. I have no problem looking at that. I think I've thought about that. Why don't we have 3 cars sitting behind town hall, and whoever needs it, needs it. We have such small departments that it's not,
3 $13,000 Ford Focuses.
Yep.
Is
It's worth looking at. That's a good point.
much less upkeep than these
Yeah.
ex-cruisers.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not opposed to the idea.
It's not as fun.
No,
Can we get back to the warrant?
Oh, yeah, that's what we're talking about here.
No, now we're into Ford Focuses. Is there anything on page 1 that we need to, these are all ours and mostly boilerplate, anybody
Other than the capital budget?
other than the
But you don't
capital
wanna
budget?
talk about
No. Well, we do need to talk about it, but let's just get through this. Page 2, that's the hunting article. I think we're good there.
Booze and hunting.
You leaving,
They go
or are you
together.
just, you cold?
No, I'm cold,
Okay.
sort of.
Booze and hunting. They go well together,
They do,
Rob.
yeah.
Yeah, they're well placed.
That's why we need the tasers in the capital article.
Number 3,
that. Page 3? The assessors.
assessors, nothing there. Page 4,
I think they have a dollar amount now, don't they, for the CPA?
they do. I don't know what it is, though.
Means you do the strategic plan?
Yeah.
We haven't had a rec meeting, I didn't know that, or.
you
Oh,
know.
maybe not. No,
They might.
Maybe that's
Ian.
why you haven't heard it, because she probably wants to have a recreation meeting.
Okay.
I thought at the CPA meeting, they were talking about $30,000, but,
For the study?
yeah.
Okay. I haven't, like I said, we meet next week.
Anything on page 4?
No.
Scott?
No.
Okay. 5?
Organ music? Are you playing the organ?
Donna probably wants to go home.
Donna.
There'll be some interesting debate on these.
So Article 5, page 5.
Yeah.
So you're essentially doubling the density within I, which is that's not business core, is it? Is that B1?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. 32 bedrooms. A lot.
Yep. Be an interesting debate. Okay on 5?
Yeah.
6?
Building height increase, which isn't as bad as it sounds.
No, actually, it's not
Extra
at all.
6 feet. It's
Yeah.
mostly-
The only thing that 6 feet really allows you to do is put a decent roof.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's in essence what it does. Anything, Scott?
No.
You good? 7? We've changed that one on the kids' place, which is now not on the warrant. I gotta tell you, I'm thrilled to have the earth removal permit
is
off
there-
of the board.
We don't even do earth removal anymore.
No, it's
It's under the
planning
planning
board.
board.
It's under the planning board. This
Why-
should be, yeah, this should be from the planning board.
Why are we submitting these?
Well,
7.
this is the one that came out as a discussion of the, didn't come from the planning board, it came from sort of like the
then
zoning
it should
bylaw
come
study
from them.
committee, but it's not a zoning bylaw, so they
Oh,
didn't want to submit it.
that's why they went to us. Can we find out if the planning board agrees with this?
Sure.
And if they do agree, would they be willing to sponsor it? If not, we will. Because it's their bylaw now.
Mhm.
Personally, think it makes sense to change. But anyway, just my opinion. Page 8 will be an interesting discussion as well.
People at home are going, why?
No, we have, just for people at home, there's an unusual, not an unusual, but there's a fair amount of zoning changes that are being recommended by the zoning bylaw study committee. And I know zoning changes are some of the most boring conversations for people to sit through, but the truth of the matter is they're some of the most important decisions we make. And so I hope folks will stick with it when these issues come up on town floor, and I hope you'll look at the articles in advance of town meeting, because as boring as they may seem, and they're not as much fun as arguing about lights and $40,000 for lamp posts and things like that, this really impacts your town when you change these bylaws. And that's not passing judgment, good or bad. That's not my point. It just changes it.
Of course, on some of some of these ones submitted by the bylaw, not in particular, but does this have something in response to our friend from Jersey? And
Nope,
no,
no,
Doesn't-
he hasn't submitted anything yet.
wasn't he supposed to, or
He
potentially?
was supposed to, he knows he's got to wait till the May town meeting now. Ideally, he'd like to have a special town meeting. I said, well, he's
No.
going to have to talk to the selectmen about that, because that's,
Well, I shouldn't say
Or
no quickly.
100 residents. Is it 100 residents for a special?
Did he get
I think
delayed,
so,
as he
yeah.
said? Sorry, it's outside
yeah,
the scope
the
of this.
negotiations with the archdiocese went slower than he expected.
Okay, sorry, I just didn't
These
know if
are-
those are his. I didn't know if these were
Yeah, a
related
lot
to
of, a
his.
lot of these have come forward as a result of sort of the strategic plan on how to develop our downtown.
Right.
And some of them are reflecting on some of the financial considerations that are out there now. One in particular, Freddie and Ginny are requiring, if I have this correct, I think 70% of the units to be rented prior to any financing, which means that for condos,
To be sold before they,
they have to be sold before they'll
they'll
even.
provide.
Right. So in essence,
mortgages
it
for
in
those
many
people.
respects brings the condo development to a screeching halt.
What address is that?
There are several in here actually that address it.
Okay. So, the last one on page 8 changes the minimum lot size from 8,000 to 4,000.
Yep.
but we've upped the bedrooms per lot. So could you do 32 bedrooms on a 4,000 square foot lot? Or is there a, I've been out of zoning for so long, I've been off the zoning board for so long, I can't remember. Is there a connection between the square footage and the number of bedrooms? Do you remember, Mr. Wade? I can't remember. It would be really handy if the ZBSC will stand up there and say, okay, this is what this actually does. And envision, here's this lot.
I would hope they would.
I think a lot of that discussion ends up happening at the advisory board committee meetings, which is help, or the, if it's a,
I can't remember.
or the planning board hearing.
But, you know, then people are gonna have to vote on it, so.
No, I know, I agree with it, it's just,
Did any of these bolded things happen?
the last three, no, we're just waiting for town council to, she's reviewing the warrant as well as providing the,
So there will be 3 more?
yeah.
Do you know the gist of them?
The revised animal control law is really just updating the chapter of the law that's referenced in the general bylaw. The amendment to bylaw chapter 640 for the treasurer collector is it's more of a substantial issue, but it came about as part of their authority to do a good standing check prior to issuing a building permit. We just need to update our bylaws to give the treasurer collector the authority to do whatever process they have to do in order to do that. And then amend the town,
They don't do that now?
oh, they do it. They just, the town council, while going through the general bylaws over the last couple of years,
So it's a house.
thought that we needed to just, yeah. So we're not going to change our internal process, just improve our bylaws. And then town clerks, I didn't get a chance to ask him, I don't know, that was just, he had said that town meeting needs to vote to approve our fees, and I had intended to ask him why he thinks that, and I haven't had a chance to do that. All the fun stuff we had going on last week.
Okay. Scott, you good? Okay.
So, I'm sure you were already planning on doing it, but you might want to just take a motion to close the warrant.
Anybody have anything else that, before we have to reopen it again next time we're together?
I'll move to an executive secretary form of government.
Got a motion?
Yeah, but there'll be no second.
I move to close the warrant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just trying to, Marion always remembers those things. I was just trying to show her up for once.
Okay. We had a couple of discussion items. Some, I think, will be pretty quick. I'll,
No, kind of,
oh,
go ahead if you want. We can get back to that if you want.
The two-page one.
Kennedy Playground.
do we don't have the budget for 82 Main Street here, do we? That's my fault. That's my fault. We'll have to table that
You
one.
need to give one of these to Rob.
We'll have to
You
table
can take mine, but I'll pass it.
Just as quick background, 82 Main Street is the house that's being built by the Municipal Housing Trust. And the agreement, which has gotten a lot of scrutiny lately, that this board
yeah.
signed
Oh, you
between the
took my-
trust,
that's my wrote it.
does require that the overall budget
Thanks,
be
Jack.
approved by this board. It's
Hey,
a
you can-
formality, but it is in the agreement. So if it's in the agreement, then we're going to follow the agreement. So it's my error. I now remember I was supposed to bring you that budget. I have it, and I didn't bring it. So we'll have to table it. Sorry. My apologies.
Oh, I've got a volunteer for your public safety committee,
Oh, you do, okay. You want to send me, or do you want me to write down?
Road safety.
road safety.
Yeah, public
committee.
safety, I was going to say, Rob didn't catch that, okay. Go ahead.
I did, I was just ignoring it.
Yeah, he was being polite. Diane Holmes.
Oh, yeah, she was on that before. She told me about that, okay.
Oh, good. All right.
Oh, very well.
So I will be very quick. I spoke to George Vallone, I think actually just before our last Selectmen's meeting, but it was literally on the phone while I was walking down here. His negotiations with the Archdiocese have gone slow. He realizes he missed his opportunity to get any zoning changes before the fall town meeting. And at that point, I told him, I said, well, if you get your act together and get them done quickly, we could still try and work out a way to get them on the warrant. And he said, no, to his credit, he said no. He said he really wants to go through a process of having some public sessions, trying to get some buy-in from not just from the community. So he wants to go through that process. Sounds like he's done this before, and so I thought that was a good, despite being later than he thought. That was good news that he knows that he's got to get the buy-in. The bridge, obviously, in the B1 district, you all know that grant has been awarded. I mean, sorry, not awarded. That grant has been submitted. We should know in the next 4 to 6 weeks whether or not it's been awarded. If I hear anything, I will certainly let you know. DPW staffing, Phil McNulty has now officially joined the town. He's the superintendent of the water division. Phil brings a great background, having worked for other communities. Most recently, he's been working on in a partnership. He's an engineer, so he's working for an engineering firm, but he's also worked for environmental partners and some other firms that we've worked with in the past. So I know between his knowledge of water systems and his engineering skills, he'll bring a great deal to the town. So we'll have Phil in sometime to meet with you. Truck route, I know, actually Scott, I think, was criticizing me.
That was an update. No, not criticizing. Just giving you a hard time, Jack. That was the only update I had on road safety, by the way. Jack has it succinctly written here.
So Bob
Did
has,
a nice job of filling him in.
he did.
Exactly. He just got my report, but yes.
He had his guy call me. So I've talked to the town administrator who basically referred me to the DPW highway, their highway superintendent. Bob's been in touch with their highway superintendent, and it's a new person.
He hasn't been
there.
able to reach. I thought he hasn't been able to reach him yet. He was going to go over there
As
today.
of
Talk
today,
about,
he's
I went over and saw him.
reached him.
Okay.
They haven't come to a. So he's going to try and package together information. Hopefully, we'll be involved, and he'll present it to their board of selectmen, to the town administrator and the board of selectmen. We'd like to be involved in that as much as we can, but obviously without
Could you
stepping on their
convey
toes.
that one of us would be more than willing to attend their meeting?
Be happy to.
Right, Scott?
Yes, I would definitely. Well, I don't know if you want to. I want to do it because I know some folks over there. That's fine.
It's your committee, by all means.
There you go, Jack.
Field trip. Field space. I don't know, to steal some of Rob's thunder. Rob attended the whole meeting. I only attended the beginning part of it, but we did have the field space meeting. Rob, you want to?
Did the medication help when you left?
It was great. It was a wonderful night. And actually, it was that school is very impressive. It was the first time I'd been inside it because I missed
Is
the
it?
dedication
Oh.
due to a wedding. So as you probably have heard, there's two alternative alignments in play right now. Both of them take away the baseball field. That's the second baseball field, the new baseball field. Move the parking around, and you have a large field area, which can be used for the free play, and then the playground equipment will stay in the place where they've recommended it from the get-go. The problem is you're taking away a baseball field. So the issue now is what do you do for another 9, 10, 11-year-old field? Because you're losing that field behind the Major League field, which was used. I mean, it was used for the kids on the pitching machine. It wasn't used for the big kids, but it is a field that we're losing, so we have to replace it.
So we're trying to see if we can fit that in somewhere over in the.
Now, is there any news on the drainage issue? And the
No,
cost?
not that I am aware of. I haven't. The $200,000 cost estimate you're talking about?
Yeah.
No, they have not. Takes them a little bit of while to come back with cost estimates at this point in the process.
Yeah, there's still a fairly hefty cost estimate to even changing it this little, because they've already done some of the drainage,
I heard 200,000. Is that the right
and the
number?
grades are set and have to
I mean,
be
if they
changed.
do away with that, the field's currently right there now. I mean,
Amazes me how
and
much
do it.
that amounts
If
to.
they take away the baseball field and try and put the parking more up closer to Boardman Street.
Right.
It's going to change some of the drainage significantly. So the kind of the back of the envelope estimate was $200,000. So the engineers are putting that together to tell us if that's an
Still
accurate number.
makes a ton of sense to me, though.
So the second option that Rob mentioned is really just kind of carving out some of the parking and making the baseball field really just an open grass play field. So it should have a lot less impact to the drainage. Of course, a change order at this is change orders that get you coming and going. So we're trying to minimize that as much as possible. But
So why do they have to change? Why not? And if they're just looking for grass fields, why not? Like you said, just turn the baseball. Not that it's a good idea, but turn the baseball field just into a grass field. That would be the cheapest. It's just
well,
The
there's
Major
still
League field?
yeah. It wasn't close to the road, right? That no one.
The new field, not the
The
existing
one
Major
that's not
League.
there or the one that is there?
The one that's there. Are they talking about that
Major
field?
League field.
Oh, no.
Oh, they're not talking about touching that.
That's,
Oh, okay, I
that's,
thought-
that's sacred.
I thought they were. Okay, I thought that was the chief was the balls hitting the school.
I walked that again, and you got to be standing in the outfield, because I sat there through innumerable baseball games when my kids were playing, and nobody can hit it from the plate to that school over the big net.
That's what I thought. But he
It's
said
gotta be-
I haven't seen it. Supposedly, I've saw other people have seen
It's
it.
like
happen.
high schoolers goofing around in the outfield trying to hit it over the net.
Right.
It's not the normal
Games,
games.
okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm.
I mean,
with,
if
with Rob,
if
not to
kids
that
are,
extent, but I'm with
Right.
Rob.
we got some future Red Sox in this town.
No, I wondered about it too. But the way they made it sound like it was happening every day, every minute. But okay.
They whine a lot. Is that what you mean?
Chicken and beer in Bicentennial Park.
So yes, to be crystal clear, Major League Field is not right now is kind of off. The
Not in
table,
play.
not being touched. So we're talking about taking the field that is the alternate. Being it's kind of in the last bit of the project, so that if we ended up with money left, we'd build another field right out by Boardman Street. We're talking about changing that just to be a grass field, but the problem still exists. We got to move some of the parking so that they can get right from the playground field, right from the playground to the open field, without having to cross a lot of parking lots. So they can have recess in a organized manner.
So that meeting is next week, and
This Thursday.
This Thursday.
we'll know.
Fire communications, I don't want to talk anymore
I think
about
we can
that.
skip that one. Yeah.
And
Please.
Miller and Myrtle, I think I emailed at least some of you last couple of weeks ago. We're all set legally now to go move forward on that. Been talking to Bob about it. He's just trying to fit it into his schedule. He's just got a time crunch with manpower. He's got a couple of projects going on, and he really wants to spend some time working on the roads. He's got to do some fix up to the roads so that because he's got some places that he's really worried when we start getting the frost in, he's going to lose some significant areas that he just wants to he can do some fixes before he gets there. Obviously, it's a safety issue. We're going to try and prioritize
I'm
that
glad
as we
we
can.
took the time to resolve this the way we
Legally
have.
and-
Yeah. Otherwise, we would have just given something away. And so sometimes it's good to take a step back.
Update on the KP School Committee, I think you had gone to their.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah, we got that invitation or you forwarded on from Superintendent Dr. Zelinsky. I went, and Pat Sneed was there from the advisory board. It was they had on their agenda item a budget thing, but it was really just Paul Schaefer, the business manager, just went over how to read a capital accounts. So it just was teaching the school committee and the folks in the audience about what this, if it's an expense item, it goes in this category, that. So it was really there was no budget talk. So that's for now, that was it. I didn't have, you were saying too, there is a way to find the agenda, by the way, Jack. You have to click on links after link, and you get in. I probably would have seen that. Maybe it would have been more descriptive.
I'm sorry.
No, I didn't. I didn't do
find
it. I didn't do enough research either. But
Yeah.
it was worth, going to. I'll continue to go when their budget stuff.
It's great that they're making more of an effort to.
No, I
involve
think, like you said, it's
Acceptance of minutes or executive session or open.
Do you have any other items, Mr.
Well,
Carney?
I just, we didn't give the time of the open house this Saturday at the fire department.
It's
I
on the
believe
big
it's
sign.
11 to 3, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like the
So, and there'll be goodies.
Donna Jones, our able
It's
assistant.
going to read the bulletin board. So
Just would encourage people to go to the open
Stick our
house.
head out, see if we can see the flashing sign.
yeah.
They always have a lot of pizza, a lot of popcorn,
Yeah,
and
it's a good time.
It's a good time to just
Just
get
don't
to
let,
know.
don't let Mr. Hamlin,
11 to 2.
just don't let him drive the tank.
And they always have some interesting entertainment out back with either tank or metro equipment. They'll put on a good show.
And are they still lighting the shed on fire and bringing people out of it? They used to do that.
They've done
the
Jaws
wrecked
of Life
car.
demonstrations, setting a
Extraction
car on
from a
fire.
car.
Oh,
Officer Eichel's toys that he gets from Metro LEC, the whiz bang, trying to
you can
control a car.
taser a
Well,
local
they were going to
official.
demonstrate that. Are you available?
Yeah, that'd be great. I love that.
Or your kids.
Yeah, I could tase one of them. And DPW did a great job on, is doing a great job on that wall on North Street. You mentioned it briefly in your update, but it's come along slowly but very nicely.
Yeah, and it's improved the sightline tremendously.
Yeah, very much so. Is the street going to be shifted at all?
I haven't asked them, but that's my assumption. I think that's the whole.
Well, the angle coming towards where you turn right to go to Stony Brook, as opposed to left on a diamond, that angle, sight vision is much better,
Yeah.
much better. That's a dangerous corner. And it does look great, you're right. And I've had several people on Everett Street, I've been remiss, because it happened a while back, not to extend compliments on that as well, about how much
Okay.
they appreciate that and how nice that intersection now looks at 115.
And there's another Chinese food restaurant opening in town. Just wanted to let you know that. Next week, the old Golden Ginger site is going to be housing a new Chinese food restaurant. It's important to me. But
Good to know.
Asian Village. Yeah.
Village.
They have a 10% off over $30. But Norfolk Net.
we voted that license.
Last
we
week.
did. Okay, they're
Yep.
done. They're in. Okay,
Yep.
good,
Yep.
good. I'm done.
Thanks to public service announcements.
Well, there's a sale this week.
I was gonna say,
I was afraid to ask.
Yeah.
All right, that's it on the commercial announcements. You're done.
King Philip had a great week in football.
What he didn't tell you was that he gets a 20% discount for saying that on television. Scott,
No.
nothing?
No.
Okay. Jack, you all set?
Other than just agreeing with Rob, the King Philip football team is off to a great start, 5-0, and the field hockey team is 6-2-2.
And you would have no vested interest in that.
Yeah.
No
plug
vested
there.
interest in that, but checks can be sent too.
Minutes. Quickly, before Rob comes up with another commercial.
Move to, I will read them on so I can make a motion to, to approve the August 21st special meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to approve the August 28th regular meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Move to approve the September 11th regular meeting minutes.
Aye. Second.
And executive session?
Yeah, I should do it. I didn't know if I had to do it separately or not. And executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And finally approve the September 25th, 2012 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mary, my compliments for getting these so quick and out and keeping us current like this. I know it's not easy, so thank you. Do we have any other business, Mr. Hathaway?
We need to go to executive session.
We will be going into executive session. I'd like to have a roll call vote.
Scott Bugby, aye.
Rob Garrity, aye.
Jim Lehan, aye. We're going into executive session for the purposes of collective bargaining. We will not be coming back into open session at the conclusion. Thank you very much for joining us. There'll be a quiz on the fire department's presentation tomorrow at 3. But we do want to take some time and really study that because it is a very important question. So anyway, thank you very much. And our next meeting is in 2 weeks. If I can check the calendar, that is the 23rd,
Yes.
I hope, October 23rd. Thank you and good night.